The 82nd Tour de France begins its 3,635 kilometres from the picturesque and old city of Saint-Brieuc on Brittany's northern coastline. It's the capital of the Côte d'Armor and was first visited by the Tour in 1938. The race stays in the area for just 3 days and then goes across northern France to Belgium. It follows a clockwise direction, tackling the Alps before the Pyrenees this year. The survivors will welcome, though, the sight of the Eiffel Tower on July the 23rd. The bookmakers are taking no chances as to the likely winner. Miguel Indurain is an odds-on favourite. Yesterday, Indurain arrived for his medical, passing it with full colours. Although with a resting heartbeat of only 28, the doctors must have wondered at times if he was still alive. And welcome to our coverage of the 82nd Tour de France. I'm Phil Liggett. I'm looking forward to being with you now for the next 3 weeks and joined as ever by Gary Imlach and Paul Sherwin. Well, last year, Chris Boardman really did thrill us with his victory in the Prologue time trial. And he's going to attempt to do the same thing today. And naturally enough, here in Saint-Brieuc, our programme will concentrate on his efforts. And just 5 minutes ago, Chris Boardman made his start from the start house for the opening prologue of the Tour de France. His face concentration, carrying all British hopes of an early yellow jersey. And that was a few minutes ago, and as you could see, since we opened the programme, the weather has changed dramatically. These pictures are now live from out on the course, and indeed news is reaching us, and it is unconfirmed, I hasten to add, that Chris Boardman has crashed out on the Prologue time trial. Now, our cameras will reveal all in a few minutes, but as you can see, the weather has turned dramatically, and it's turned this Prologue time trial into a skid pan. The early starter, Jackie Duron, the 27th man to leave in lovely warm conditions, is the leader on the board with a time of exactly 9 minutes. And we're now watching here on the climb, coming over the top, Oscar Pelliccioli, a former King of the Mountains in the Tour of Italy 1 year ago. Paul, any news on Boardman?
The news coming over at the moment is he's alongside his team manager's car and he's holding his leg, and it seems to me this is news that's coming over the race radio at the moment, so it may well be Boardman starting extremely quickly. The first indications where he had a superb time over the first part of the course. He was descending at 70-75 kilometres an hour. He may have taken a few too many risks, but we'd have to wait for the cameras to get out onto the course to get real confirmation, but that seems to be the story coming through at the moment.
Well, this is the man who got an 11th hour call-up, and his team indeed to the Tour de France at the expense of Robert Miller's Le Groupement team, which pulled out of the sport altogether just a couple of days ago. Zenon Jaskula now making his start. 2 years ago, he finished third in the Tour de France, the highest finish ever by a Polish rider. There's the overall situation. Jackie Duron in with 9 minutes exactly. Pelliccioli comes in 163rd, losing 73 seconds indeed to the time there of Jackie Duron. Well, this is a very sad state of affairs indeed. The organisation here has worked so hard to make this a success, and the result is the rain has come and ruined the spectacle completely here in Brittany. And the riders now are waiting still to start. Tony Rominger is the man who will claim that bicycle in the start house, and still to go after him will be Marco Pantani, Yevgeny Berzin, and of course Miguel Indurain. Now, Tony Rominger, will he like the conditions?
He will not like the conditions. Nobody has liked these conditions today. It has been so dangerous. It's been extremely tricky out there. A lot of the top champions will not take the risk because they could lose the Tour de France with a crash like this out on the course. Rominger has got about 1 minute to go before he starts. He may well have already heard the information about Chris Boardman out on the course there, and it's not even come back to us here in the commentary position as to whether or not Chris Boardman is up and running again at the moment. This is Tony Rominger, the man who so much wants to win this year's Tour de France, but there has been a catastrophe out there on the course for Chris Boardman at the moment, and it really is a shame. He's given everything. He's dedicated himself to this prologue. He won the prologue of the Tour de France last year with a record time. He must have taken so many risks out on the corners there that he just couldn't hold it up in one of them.
Well, we've always talked about how great a favourite Miguel Indurain is, and this is the very thing that can happen to a long-distance cyclist. The weather changes like it has and turns the race into a little bit of a farce. Now, Paul, this takes me back to 1978 when the Tour started in Holland in Leiden, where the stage from memory was won by Jan Raas. The next day they annulled the stage and started again. They didn't count the prologue.
Well, it was a very tricky time trial course as well, I have to admit. There were a lot of cobblestones in, as there are in this time trial here around Saint-Brieuc. Normally on a tarmac road like this, it isn't quite so bad. But once you get rain on the cobblestones, and these little tiny cobblestones that you've got around here in this Breton town really are slippy and treacherous in this damp, wet conditions. This is Tony Ronger out on the course, and you can see as he goes round this corner how carefully the riders are taking it when they come onto these little pieces of cobbles, and that may well be what the organisation of the Tour de France will be obliged to do today, because there has been so much of a difference between the early starters in this time trial and the riders who are starting now.
Well, Jackie Durand, who will have to be brought back from his hotel where he's been for an hour or so now, and will be very surprised if he's watching television that he's still the leader on the board. But to my knowledge, Jackie Durand has never in his life as a professional won a time trial race. And the former champion of France, in fact, he's won the road race championship the last 2 years, which he lost that title just a few days ago, which passed over to Eddie Seigneur, a teammate of Chris Boardman. This is Rominger out on the course now. A man much more likely to produce a good time in bad weather. He is a tough rider, but my goodness me, he never expected conditions like this. The arrival now, Maurizio Fondriest of the Lampre team.
Which confirms, in fact, that Chris Boardman isn't around, because he started behind Chris Boardman out on the course. So Boardman still may be standing at the side of the road. I know the race doctor will be out there as quickly as possible, but we're waiting now for Chris Boardman to come. Maurizio Fondriest started 2 minutes behind him, so Boardman losing an awful lot of time. It may well be that he hasn't got up and started the Tour de France at the moment. We just can't get in these conditions any information from out on the race route.
Well, look at this, Fondriest, who won the time trial stage of the Kellogg's Tour of Britain last year, way down the overall situation. Look how delicately too. This is a really downhill, hairpin right bend. He continues to turn after this bend. As we swing back here with our French television to see the start of Marco Pantani, who nearly lost both wheels on that blue square of paint. Every rider has slipped as they've left the start house. Pantani nearly gave us a double there.
Well, absolutely treacherous, that paint on the front there, the Saint-Brieuc sign. It looked absolutely marvellous here before we started the race, because it was a superb day. The last 2 or 3 days have been very, very hot, and that has made it even more treacherous. This is the first rain that the area has had in so many months, and it really is an awful shame for the organisation. But Rominger, you see, taking a great deal of care going around these corners.
And there, as he comes out of the bend and goes through the chicane, well, of course, this is very definitely a stage of the Tour de France, and Chris Boardman has to finish it to be allowed to start tomorrow's stage at all, and at the moment he has not come in. So we are waiting to hear more on that, but these are live pictures coming to you from the Tour de France, and we'll have to go with what comes at us. And right now we're looking at the arrival of Alex Zülle, who Paul and I were feeling this was a man who could spring a surprise, but of course the weather has done that already. Zülle, who finished second in his home tour, the Tour of Switzerland, and now heading up in the murk of the evening here in Brittany. And Zülle has not enjoyed his ride a bit, but his time is going to tell us just how well he will stay up among the leaders. Remember, Jackie Durand, and there's his time. This is an extremely fine performance by Zülle. He's going to finish in one of the best times since the rain come down, but that is only good enough for 26th place at the moment, 9 minutes, 23 seconds. And this is Evgeny Berzin, the rider who is riding his first Tour de France, having last year won so convincingly the Tour of Italy, where he beat Miguel Indurain, and now he's facing him here in the Tour de France.
And all these riders realise now how dangerous it is out on the course. Boardman still hasn't come up to the finish line here. He only has to finish the stage today, because in the Prologue time trial you cannot be eliminated. He just has to be able to try and get up. But we're getting confirmation now, in fact, that Boardman hasn't restarted, and in fact he will not cross the finish line here, so he has abandoned the Tour de France.
Well, this is unbelievable, but our computer here, the Finnish commentary position, simply says big surprise with Chris Boardman, who will not cross the finishing line, and they will give us more details soon. But it sounds as though Boardman has withdrawn from the Tour de France after a matter of 2 miles or 3 or 4 kilometres, and that is all. Down onto the quayside now as we cross the valleys to climb back up to the finish, and this is Tony Rominger in full cry. This is probably the fastest section of the course after you come off the descent. It is flat, the only flat bit on it officially is 25 metres above sea level, and then they climb up the hill towards the finish, which will bring them up to around 300 metres above sea level. Well, Rominger, of course, will not be concerned about the great time by Jackie Durand. He will be more concerned about the time that Miguel Indurain will do, or indeed this man, last year's King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque. And Virenque is finding his form. He's had a very good race just before coming to the Tour de France. He is now on form. He's looking very, very strong on the climb here.
He's posted some fantastic performances. You know, he beat Miguel Indurain on 2 of the mountain stages of the recent Dauphiné Libéré in France, and he really has announced himself as a great challenger this year. He says, I will go out and I will fight Indurain on all of his own terrains, but this year I feel as if I've improved enough in the time trial to actually be a challenger for the overall standings.
Well, he's the pin-up boy of France, Richard Virenque. All the ladies seem to like him, and he always turns on the style when he comes to the Tour. He's only a young man, but he loves this race, and he's now going to try and put in a time that will survive near the men that matter. And there in the start house in the corner of our picture is Miguel Indurain wearing the yellow jersey as last year's winner of the Tour, as Richard Virenque comes home. And his time, not a great one. He's gone over the 10-minute mark. That'll put him in the hundreds. And I think a quick flash, 139th finish for Richard Virenque. So Virenque is in with a poorish time, but remember, he's only worried about the times of Indurain, Rominger, and the late starters. Durand will pass away. Even if he gets the lead tonight, he'll pass away later in this Tour for sure. Now, the big man is on course.
He's on course, and take note, Phil, because in fact he's adopted a normal bicycle. 1 or 2 riders out in the early part of the rain were trying to use the aerodynamic bicycles. It may well be that they weren't able to get them here from the hotels in time to change. Indurain, starting the last man of the day, is using a normal road bike with no advantage at all from the aerodynamics. He wants safety. He doesn't want to take any risks at all, but he's riding extremely well at the moment. And a strange thing is he hasn't even worn a helmet, because normally Indurain always puts a helmet on in the time trial.
That's a good point. In fact, a lot of riders have started today without their streamline helmets on. They're just riding normal bikes as well. Now, Chris Boardman, in fact, started with his helmet on, a streamlined helmet, and indeed his very, very streamlined Lotus machine. It may not have been the bike for this course, which has turned out to be technically extremely difficult, and the weather has made it quite simply treacherous. Now, Miguel Indurain, he has won throughout his career 8 time trials in the Tour de France. In the last 4 victories, he's gone on to win in Paris. He is the king of time trials. Only Chris Boardman really has upset the rhythm in the Tour. Now he seems to be out at the moment. This is the arrival now of Zenon Jaskula, a very good time trialist indeed, when he can turn on the style. He's a tough man. They make them tough in Poland, and Zenon Jaskula is doing a very good ride here. He'll be much quicker than Richard Virenque as he comes over the line in 9 minutes and 44 seconds. That will keep him well in touch with the leaderboard, but not indeed in touch with the man who leads this race right now, Jackie Durand. And Jackie Durand, in fact, now has been brought back to the area here, ready for the presentation in case nobody does beat him. And that's from a man who started 27th of the 189 riders today. That reminds you a little bit about Sean Yates' great victory a few years back, because the weather changed, he had a tailwind, the rest got a crosswind.
That's right, Rominger's the next man to come. There are only 4 more riders who can actually dethrone Jackie Durand at the moment. That's either going to be Tony Rominger, Marco Pantani, Eugenie Berzin, or Miguel Indurain himself. But you can see, in fact, Tony Rominger has taken the risk. He's got his full helmet on. He's also using his aerodynamic time trial bicycle, and that may well give him a slight advantage over Miguel Indurain. But it's interesting to note, I wonder what the organisation of the Tour de France are going to do this evening, whether they're going to let the result stand, or if they'll come back on it like they did in Leiden in Holland, that 1978, and actually just stop the result.
Well, knowing Chris Boardman's team manager, Roger Leger, who has ridden the Tour de France, he'll be into the jury room tonight, and the meetings could go on quite late, I think, as they try to persuade them to either annul this event or allow Chris Boardman back in. But if you don't finish the stage, I'm not too sure quite how they will get round those rules. Anyway, the arrival of Rominger now, the man who is second favourite in this year's Tour de France to Indurain. And now we'll get some real idea as to the quality of this man's performance. He goes over the cobblestones, and on screen now, it's a good ride. It's going to be alongside Zenon Jaskula's as Tony Rominger comes home. But again, 26 seconds lost to Durand. 30th place for Tony Rominger, 9:26 his time. So he is 18 seconds better than Zenon Jaskula, as immediately we switch out now back to the quayside, which is about halfway along this 7-kilometre course, and Indurain quickly out of the saddle, because this is one of the areas where he can limit his losses or indeed make time.
He won't take any risks at all in the corners, and this is where he'll try and put his power to good use. You know, when he comes to the final climb up here, that is when Indurain may well be able to pull something back, but it doesn't look at the moment as if anybody is going to dethrone Jackie Durand. As we said, he started in 27th position on the day, and he really had the advantage of having a totally dry course. But Indurain is not going to go down without a fight. He's riding like a man possessed at the moment. He's totally concentrated. You can see he's looking all over the road, trying to cut every last little bit that he can. But at the end of this long straight, he will turn to the left and then have to start the long climb back up to the finish line. It takes 3 kilometers for him to reach that, and Indurain looking extremely strong at the moment, as did Tony Rominger a little bit earlier. But you see those times are all still off the leaderboard of 9 minutes, which was set so early in the day by Jackie Durand, the former double French champion.
So Indurain continues to ride in front of a vastly thinned crowd here, which has been standing behind those barriers 10 deep all day, and as soon as the action started, the rain came and many of them have slipped away. Well, again on the finishing line here now, where Boardman has not arrived, the journalists are saying that he has been taken to hospital, but there is no confirmation of any of his injuries at all. But they are saying that Chris has been taken to hospital.
That is such a shame, Phil, because he built himself up for this event. He abandoned the midi lead. This is Marco Pantani, the young man who was the revelation of last year's Tour de France, a superb climber. He won't be liking the conditions out there at the moment, but I feel he's come back to form. He had an awful accident early in May when he was knocked off out training by a motorist, and then he came back in the Tour of Switzerland and he absolutely leapt up the mountains, the same as he was doing in the Tour de France last year, and won a stage just before the end, and that's when he decided he was good enough to come back and ride the Tour de France this year.
Well, this is a real true climber, one we haven't seen the like of for many, many years in the Tour de France. He will excite us when we go into the Alps and the Pyrenees for sure. And his time in the time trial is not bad either. 9 minutes, 50 seconds, only 104 for Marco Pantani. But he survived the day and hasn't conceded much time at all to Rominger, Gascula or Alex Zula. Zula, by the way, has done 9 minutes 23 seconds, so he's picked up 3 seconds on Tony Rominger. And that is an indication of the way this race might have gone if Jackie Durand had not had the opportunity to start in the much better conditions. Indurain looks very, very cool indeed here. This man is vastly experienced. He knows what he has to do. He won't worry about winning this race or beating Durand. He will just want to know what the times are of Rominger, Pantani, Berzin. They're the men he's concerned with. And he may well have known before the start that Boardman had crashed as well.
He may well have done. He was down there on the start line, and the news gets round very quickly here. It may well be a little bit of jungle telegraph, but Miguel Indurain will know. You can look at his face now, though. He's not thinking about Boardman. He's not thinking about Rominger. He's totally convinced that he has to get to the top of this climb as fast as possible. He looks extremely strong. He hasn't weakened at all. He's got about 2 kilometers to go, I think, before he gets to the finish line. And Miguel Indurain looks to me like he's set for a fine performance, but we've got to wait for the clock. It gets out of the saddle here to lift that pace a bit. It really is a hard part of the course. It's a tough finish. 3 kilometers from the bottom of the valley there up to the finish line here in Saint-Brieuc.
Well, this is the man who lost his hat-trick of wins in the Prologue time trial last year when Chris Boardman beat him by 15 seconds and set the fastest time ever seen, or the fastest average speed ever seen in any stage of the Tour de France at 55 kilometers an hour. Now Boardman appears to be out of this year's Tour. Berzin now coming up towards the finish. That leaves just Indurain out on the course. Evgeny Berzin, will this be the man to challenge Miguel Indurain right through the 3 weeks of this year's Tour de France? Well, we're going to get some idea now, Paul, as he rolls up towards the finish, soaking wet.
He doesn't look so good. He looked to me as if he was slipping a little bit in those corners, and today is a day that the mechanics had to play their role as well to make sure that all the tyre pressures are exact, because if the tyres are too hard, that's when the bicycle will slip all over the road here as he comes up to the line. He's well off the leaderboard. He's over 10 minutes.
Well, this is a disastrous time for little Evgeny Berzin. 10:07, only 156 of the 188 riders who have now finished their stage of the Tour de France. The other man is this man here, who has won the last 4 Tours de France. Out of the last 3 prologues, he's won 2 of them, finished second in the other. And I feel he's not going to win this one now, but he's done a very strong ride indeed. He's way up on Evgeny Berzin, and you know, Indurain could take a minute here out of Berzin, and what a way to start the Tour proper tomorrow, a minute to the good over somebody like Berzin.
And also he may well get a 30-second advantage only Tony Rominger. Rominger finished in 9 minutes and 26 seconds, and Miguel Indurain has not weakened at all on this climb. He's really still going along as strong as ever, but he's lost so much time on those corners. You know, everybody has lost time. There's the team manager right up behind him there giving him that information, but that is the face of a Miguel Indurain who's extremely concentrated. We have to wait now for the time split, the time to come up on the screen in front of us, and this is Miguel Indurain, and what is going to be the time?
So now we have Miguel Indurain turning into the home straight here in Saint-Brieuc in the most atrocious conditions I can remember for a prologue since 1978. Miguel Indurain is now sprinting for the line, and this is the man who's going to show us what times are, but it's way outside of Jackie Durand, who will win the prologue time trial. Indurain himself, 9:31, and finishes only 35th. With that time of 9 minutes and 31 seconds, he concedes time to Alex Zula, Tony Rominger, two principal men who will attack him as this race goes on. But you know, in fact, Miguel Indurain has done a great ride under the conditions, but the man that we are all concerned about is Chris Boardman. We are receiving unconfirmed reports that, in fact, he has gone to hospital. There does seem no doubt, however, that his Tour de France has lasted something like 5 minutes. When we come back after the break, we'll do our best to update you on the situation.
To emulate this man, the last rider to take the yellow jersey on day one and keep it all the way to Paris. He did it 60 years ago, and no one's managed it since. The year was 1935, the rider was Romain Meis of Belgium, and this is the one time in the race he wasn't in yellow, the start. Meis won the first stage, though not so much under his own steam. It was that of French Railways, nipping over a level crossing just before the barrier came down and stranded the rest of the field. That gave him a 3-minute lead, which he built on all the way to Paris, and no one has led the race from start to finish since.
Well, the news about Chris Boardman is not all bad at all. I'm sure Sally Ann will be pleased to hear that. In fact, the police are telling us here that Chris has not gone to hospital, but he is with his team manager, and they are making a decision whether to go to hospital. But in fact, we believe that Chris crashed on a descent, slid completely off the course, and did try to remount his bike, but had a leg problem and couldn't get going, and they stopped him. Now, Paul, I believe you have a further update on that.
Well, the information coming over the radio was that Jean-Claude Keely, the organisation of the Tour de France, was behind Chris Boardman at the time, and he said he was going the fastest of any of the riders that he'd followed so far today. He was flying along at 75 kilometres an hour. He came into a corner. He was going so fast he didn't touch his brakes at all, and he lost it and went into the barriers. And that is the situation at the moment. They tried to get him back up onto his feet, but he just could not get going again, and that's a very sad day.
Well, with the rain that we've seen like there is today, let's have a look at how the result has turned out. And I'll tell you what, a lot of names we may not have heard of here in the top 5 places. Jackie Durand will be the winner of the stage. In second place, Thierry Laurent of Castorama team, Durand's teammate. Third, Francis Moreau, Chris Boardman's teammate, a former world champion, by the way. In fourth is Laurent Brochard, and in fifth is Arsenio Gonzalez of Miguel Indurain's Spanish Benesto team. Now, I have just been passed a note here from outside which tells me that Chris Boardman has a suspected broken collarbone, which means he is certainly out of the Tour de France, and he will certainly be now on his way to hospital. So, Chris Boardman out of the Tour de France, which is very, very sad indeed for all of us. We were expecting so much from him, but the Tour de France, of course, goes on. And tomorrow it will be 233 kilometres based here in Brittany. Let's hope the weather is a lot better, and it will go from Dinard along to Lannion. During our course of the 3 weeks, we will bring you our competitions, and we'll keep you up to date with some very nice recipes on French cooking as well, on what has been an extremely strange night here in Saint-Brieuc. We'll leave you now with some sights and sounds of the Tour de France, the sort of sights and sounds we hope you'll enjoy over the next 3 weeks. Until then, goodbye. continue, but his injuries were such that the only course to take was to abandon the Tour de France. Boardman carried away his attempts to star in this year's race over at the very first hurdle. And the Tour de France this morning has moved some 60 kilometres away from Saint-Brieuc to Dinan, where the weather remains very unpleasant. Let's go to Gary Imlach, who'll update us now on Chris Boardman's condition.
Unlucky Chris, another day.
The extent of Boardman's bad luck was still a subject for speculation as he was helped from the team car to the Tour ambulance. At Saint-Bauchet Hospital, though, later came confirmation, a broken wrist, and more seriously, 2 broken bones in his ankle.
On this tibia, the 2 bone of the ankle, there is a broken, the 2 bones, and there is a problem of stability of the joint.
Go too fast, and you have the back wheels go out, and he crashed, but it's very fast. It's 75 km an hour, 80. It's not a difficult turn on the left. It's not a difficult turn, but it's so fast with the rain.
This morning, after a night contemplating an 8-week layoff from cycling, the patient was as well as could be expected.
Pretty dark.
Yeah, a bit on the sore side. A bit of a throbbing leg, but apart from that, okay.
Talk us through the crash itself.
I'm not so sure it was me pushing too hard, actually. That was my first thought. It's more the change in surface, and with the dimming light, it was very difficult to see the where it was totally smooth tarmac and where it was grippy. And when you're pushing it to the limit, that makes a big difference.
And as you skidded across the road, the team car's right behind you.
Yeah, Roger managed to stop 1 foot after hitting my head. So I was just like skidding along the floor, and I thought, oh, phew, I made that. The car in the back of my head. Insult to injury. But no, there's a lot of people with worse problems in the world.
What does this do to your morale? I mean, you were set up for the Prologue. Obviously, you wanted to do other things as well this tour, but the Prologue was the first goal, and you've made an impact for the 2nd year running, I suppose.
Impact being the operative word. Yeah, it was. That's the operative thing you said, really. The Prologue was the first goal. It wasn't the most important. It was something, a little bit of insurance. It was something I could do. I could take the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, so I really wanted to try and do that. And then after that, we'd look towards the mountains. This was going to be my first chance to really move forward and try to ride with the big riders. Whether that was going to be possible, I don't know. But I was ready for it. I was ready to suffer. 3 weeks in hell is the quote, really.
Instead of 3 weeks of hell, it's 8 weeks of hell doing nothing. What are you going to do with that time?
It's going to be very difficult with such a long period of time to find positive aspects to do, which is what I've done in the past when I've had shorter layoffs. Like, right, what can we do that can be positive and can help me go forward? Be it losing weight, or in this case, it's going to be learning some French maybe. But yeah, we'll actually probably be spending some time with the kids, whose first reaction was, "Oh, great, Dad's coming home." So mercenary little buggers got their own way.
And pretty quickly too. By early this afternoon, the fastest man on 2 wheels had touched down in Manchester for a reunion with his family and to seek expert medical advice on whether his ankle will need to be pinned.
And the empty space on the sign-in sheet this morning at the start, the GAN leader is out of the Tour. 188 riders continue. And the surprise overall standings after yesterday's Prologue time trial, Jackie Giron of France will wear the maillot jaune today, and he leads now ahead of 3 other Frenchmen, Thierry Laurent, Francis Moreau and Laurent Brochard. Of the favourites, Alex Zula, who incidentally also fell yesterday and lost an estimated 10 seconds, is the best placed. He's 23 seconds back. Tony Rominger lies in 30th position. Miguel Indurain is 35th, 31 seconds back. The big losses, well, they came from Marco Pantani, who lost 50 seconds to the day's winner, and Evgeny Berzin, a massive 67 seconds. And the rollout this morning from the very, very pretty Brittany town of Dinan, but I'm afraid the weather not giving it its best face. And this is the route, 233.5 kilometres entirely in Brittany, and running mostly along the coastline, some small hills on the way, and most important, bonus sprints as well, and at the end, a small uphill climb to the finish. And at the first time bonus sprint today, which came at Sables-le-Don, it was a victory there for Jan Zarada. In second place was Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov. So the big sprinters out early on the road towards Lannion today. And now we join the action here as they climb up the Côte de Falaise, and it has been a battle between Francois Simon, and once over the top of the climb we have seen an attack first from Claudio Chiappucci and now from Richard Virenque. And Virenque, Paul, quite clearly interested in keeping the win he had last year in the King of the Mountains, because he scored on the climbs already today.
And he said he will attack whenever he can on the way down to the mountains there. But in this little breakaway that's gone clear, Miguel Indurain was almost to the front of the main group as well. But the whole field coming back together at the moment, but everybody paying an awful lot of attention to the race today. But the weather is far from ideal this afternoon. The temperatures are not going to be more than 17 degrees Celsius. Very cloudy, and still the possibility of strong winds coming in from the coast. And again, those storms that we had yesterday could well repeat themselves. Wind will only be about 14 to 15 kilometers an hour, but not very good racing conditions today.
Well, the only good news is that the heavy rain has eased somewhat, especially at the finishing area where we commentate from. And at the moment, it does appear to be drying up. And that's only as well because it is a very, very tortuous approach to the finish, coming through the village of Lannion before they climb away on wide roads up to the line. There's the result of the Falaise de Plouzec. Simon was the winner ahead of Peter de Klerk, those two dicing it out. And I think that means that Francois Simon, another early leader of days gone by in the King of the Mountains competition, will pull on the first polka dot jersey of this year's tour as well.
Festina boys very active at the front today. This is Lars Mikkelsen, the man who won Wevelgem earlier in the season. They're trying to put a lot of pressure on the Castorama team, who at the moment have been trying to control the race. They're the team of the leader, Jackie Durand. Somewhat of a surprise, that win yesterday, but I think helped by the fact that he started when the roads were a lot drier in the early part of the race, and getting for him what I think was probably his first ever time trial victory as a professional.
I'll tell you what, it's going to be a tough ride now for the Castorama riders. They're managed by Cyril Guimard, who's trained more Tour de France winners than any other team manager. He was behind the great Greg LeMond initially, and also Bernard Hinault and Laurent Fignon. But, you know, he wasn't expected to lead the Tour after the prologue, that's for sure. And the last laugh went to Cyril Guimard last night. He not only had the winner on the overall classification, he also had the second-place rider as well, Thierry Laurent. But what it does mean now, of course, is the Castorama team are going to have to work very hard to control this race as it moves across northern France. The race route, very briefly, taking the riders into Belgium during this week, where there's a big time trial where Indurain will be expected to ride well. Then it descends down to the Alps, across the bottom of France, into the Pyrenees, before going all the way back up via Limoges into Paris on July the 23rd. A long way indeed. And there, sitting in the slipstream of his teammates, the surprise leader, Jackie Durand. But he's not a surprise winner in many ways, because he has won the classic race, the Tour of Flanders, after one of the longest breakaways in that single-day classic race. He's also won a stage of the Tour de France in Cahors last year, where the weather was extremely hot. What a contrast to today.
And not to mention his two national French titles. At the front there, Thierry Marie, the man who I think did one of the best rides yesterday, because he finished in 9 minutes and 19 seconds, which, considering the climatic conditions that he raced under, that was the fastest of anyone in the latter part of the race.
So the field all coming back together. The boys in pink are the Spanish Once team, and Alex Zula, as I said earlier, he fell yesterday and nobody actually found out until this morning, and the journalists were very surprised indeed, but he remounted so quickly that they estimate his loss to be around 10 seconds. So he really did a marvellous ride in those atrocious conditions last evening.
Castorama are going to have a hard job over the next few kilometers to try and control this main pack, because it's very difficult terrain they have to face. It's up and down all the time, providing great platforms for anybody to try and attack and break clear.
And sadly the race continues without Chris Bourbon, but there are indeed two British riders in this event. Max Sciandri, who, although he lives in Italy and feels he's very much an Italian, he has a British passport and a British racing license. Yesterday he was 52 seconds off the winning time. He rests in 113th place. And Sean Yates, riding his 12th Tour de France, that equals the record of Barry Hoban as a British Isles rider, having ridden 12 tours. Sean Yates, 49 seconds off first place yesterday. His overall position at the moment, 103rd.
And I'm quite sure that a lot of the fans out there of Sean Yates will be happy to know that he will be racing again next year. Many people thought that it would be his last season, but he's decided to give it a go. He's got such great form at the moment coming into this race that Yates has decided that he will race up until the end of 1996. And for the second consecutive year, he's told us it's going to be his last year.
And so there is the man who is leading in yellow for France, getting French off to a great start in this year's Tour de France, and quite clearly fired by that maillot jaune on his shoulders. And quite clearly too, he is prepared to hang on to the lead as long as possible. He made the best of the bad weather yesterday. But the race altogether, we are 80 kilometres from the finish, or that's about 50 miles. So we'll take a break.
This man won the Tour and never received the yellow jersey, even in Paris. Although, to be fair to the organisers, that was because it hadn't actually been thought of at the time. The tale of the first ever Tour de France after the break. But Tour de France in 1903 was an Italian, Maurice Garin. Luckily for the home fans, though, he'd qualified for French citizenship by then, apparently by meeting the stringent smoking requirements. And that wasn't his only vice. Garin actually won the Tour the following year. Got disqualified, allegedly, taking the train on a couple of stages. Still, the Tour was well on its way to becoming a world-class race. Not bad for an event which started life as a gimmick to help sell more copies of the French weekly sports paper, Loto. In the days before bingo and price wars, Loto's editor Henri de Grange hit on the idea of boosting circulation by staging what amounted to the world's biggest newspaper round. 2,400 kilometres in 6 easy stages, an average of 400k a day. And for the riders, that was just the start of the challenge. Not only were the roads not closed, some of them weren't even made. There were no support teams, no feed stations, and fortunately for some of the riders, no compulsory urine samples to give either. The big drawback for the Tour as a spectacle, though, was that no one could tell who was winning. So the race leader was given a special jersey, yellow to match the colour of Loto's newsprint. Of course, in the days of black and white photography, this wasn't much use unless you were actually lining the route. But for years, that was the only way to see the Tour. When the race was re-established after World War II, though, everyone got a look.
21 étapes, 100 coureurs, 5000 km, 5 millions de primes, telles sont les grandes lignes du 34e Tour de France.
Newsreels took cinema audiences on the road with the race, as the Tour became a sporting soap opera, available in 3 weekly instalments down at the local Gaumont. The result was bigger crowds to watch it in person, and international recognition for great post-war riders like Louison Bobet, Jean Robic, and the Italian Fausto Coppi. As its popularity spread, so did the race, into Belgium, Holland and the rest of Europe. There were experiments with national teams which didn't last, and the arrival of the huge publicity caravan, which did. More money in the race meant better support for the riders, although well into the 50s they were still carrying their own spares. By the time the podium had been introduced in the early 60s, the classic iconography of the Tour was pretty much fixed. Of course, since then, spandex and the Champs-Élysées have superseded wool and the Parc des Princes velodrome, and no doubt the means will continue to evolve over the years. The end, though, is always the same.
Well, thanks, Gary, and the ending there is the nice bit of being a professional bike rider. But we're now back here with the 1995 edition of the Tour de France and the big peloton under the charge of the blue jerseys of Castorama. But one rider has managed to slip them. He broke away at around about 160 kilometres covered, and we are now in the region of 45 kilometres from the finish, and that is Eric Decker, the Dutchman, riding for the Novell team, and his lead, the last check we had, was 1 minute and 45 seconds.
You can see there's a decision going on here amongst the Castorama boys. They're extremely happy, I think, with the fact that Eric Decker has gone away, because in 45 kilometres to go, there is in fact a bonus sprint for 6 seconds, and with the gap being so slight that Jackie Durand has over the rest of the riders in this race, they would like to see Decker take that bonus.
Well, that was Thierry Marie there, who has won the Prologue 3 times since 1986, trying to speak to his teammates, and Francois Simon, who's also riding extremely well, because he will probably be the new leader in the King of the Mountains when the calculations are made at the end of the day. He's been in the action all day on the small climbs sprinkled along the coast road as we now head down towards Lannion. Well, they're keeping the pace nice and high. Interesting to note too, Paul, the riders with the red flashes on the shoulders, they're the teammates of Eric Decker, the rider out in front. They too now are trying to mingle and to deter the bunch from chasing.
It's a strange tactic for them, because if it had been a different rider at the head of affairs, they would have had to be doing the chasing, because they would like to prepare the sprint for Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov. But it's a very strange sprint here at the moment. This is the first chance we have to have a look at Eric Decker, who's riding extremely well at the moment, building up that lead all the time. It soon will be round about 2 minutes, I would think. Just before the Tour de France, Decker won the Tour of Sweden for the second consecutive year, and he won that with his time trialing ability.
So the second bonus sprint of the day. There's the banner on the horizon at Trestel, which means we are 45.5 kilometers from the finish. Now there is 6 seconds for the man who wins the sprints right up until day 7 of this year's Tour de France. Then there are no more time bonuses. 4 seconds and 2 seconds. And his lead at the moment is around about 44 seconds ahead. And this is the young man who's won the Tour of Sweden for the last 2 years and is now really developing well as a professional bike rider. So he goes through at Trestel, pinches the 6 seconds time bonus, but overall, he's still a long way behind. And if he stayed away till the finish, he would pick up another small time bonus at Radom, and then there is a 20-second time bonus for the win, and then the bunch will be getting a little bit worried, because the calculations might well give him the leader's yellow jersey.
Which started this morning in 86th place, 44 seconds behind Jackie Durand. And if he could just have a small lead when he gets to the finish line, we could see a new yellow jersey this evening. At the moment, looking back at the main field, you can see there's no major reaction at all. And I think, in fact, the Castorama team have completely shut down, because they want some of the other teams to come to the front. Maybe the team of Mario Cipollini, Mercatone Uno from Italy, should be forced to the front to try and chase down this lone breakaway of Eric Decker.
Now let's see if the sprinters are planning their assault for second and third place here on the sprint line at Trestel. At the first sprint today at Sable d'Or-les-Pins, after 56 kilometers, it was Jan Zurada, Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov and Fabio Baldato, the three of them very fast finishers indeed, who sharpened their legs to take the first 3 places. Now Decker has spoilt the sprinters' play. He's gone clear by that big gap, and they're left with second and third places to fight out. But what I must tell you is that these short sprints also count towards the points for the green jersey competition, and certainly Abdou-Japarov, who won that last year, has a big interest in winning it again. So not surprisingly, we're going to see him in the action, and there he is in second place now, being led out by one of his teammates, and Abdou-Japarov wants second place because he knows Decker won't be a threat because he's a teammate up the road. So it's 1-2 for Novell as Abdou-Japarov comes well clear and gets the 4-second time bonus and second place on the sprint. Nicely done.
And in fact, I think that was Mario Cipollini moving up behind him as well. It wasn't. In fact, it was one of the teammates of Mario Cipollini, because Cipollini, in fact, has a different coloured bicycle to the rest of the team. He's riding a blue one. I think that may well have been Martinello coming up there, the man who usually finishes off for Mario Cipollini just as we get nearer to the finish.
And there's Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov riding in different colours this year because he has changed teams, and just alongside him is indeed Silvio Martinello, who was sprinting so well in the Tour de France last year. He's back in the action again with a third place finish there at Trestel.
This is the man who's lying in third place overall at the moment, Francis Moreau, and I'm fairly sure that the Castorama boys will be quite worried about Moreau towards the end, because he's a superb finisher, a man who himself was a world pursuit champion. He's just 3 seconds back, and I tell you, this finish here would be quite strange, because there's a very dangerous descent into the town with a very dangerous corner, and that's where we could get a split in the main field, and there's just that few seconds lead that Jackie Durand has over the rest of the field, and that could all change today.
And the official time gap at the sprint there was 2 minutes the lead for Eric Decker, so he's still building over this field, and this is now beginning to look as though danger bells should start ringing, because in fact Eric Decker is now the race leader of the Tour de France, having recuperated the 44 seconds he was behind at the start this morning, and in fact has himself a nice comfortable margin at the moment.
There's a strange game being played out there. The Castorama team, not as organised as they were earlier on. They've definitely taken a decision not to close down the gap that Eric Decker has over the rest of the field, but nobody else wants to come forward and chase. It's 1 or 2 riders trying to jump clear. The man in second position at the moment is in fact Laurent Brochard, another Frenchman who is lying in 4th place. The French holding the top 4 placings in the overall standing of this year's Tour de France at the moment, which is quite a rare occasion for them.
And the man setting the pace here, Emmanuel Magnon, it's his job. They call them domestiques, the helpers. It's his job now to keep the pace going, and all of the other teams know that his teammate Jackie Duron is in the hot seat in yellow. They all know that this team must chase. They know indeed that this man here is now the new leader of the Tour de France on the road. It's up to the Castorama team to close them down and bring him back. And they're going to make the most of it now, because they can enjoy the fact that they don't have the yellow jersey on their team. There we are, 42 kilometers now to go to the finish, and that's still a long way. It's all of an hour of racing, just slightly less for Eric Decker. But if this man can just keep the gap nicely, then he is going to go down into the finish at Lannion and look for the yellow jersey. We'll find out if all that happens a little later on, but now we'll take a short break.
In 1964, Jacques Anquetil founded an exclusive club, one that Miguel Indurain has already been proposed and seconded for. If you can't guess what it is, I hereby condemn you to 2.5 minutes of suspense. When Jacques Anquetil rode to victory in 1964, he was the first man ever to win 5 tours. Kenny Merckx joined him in 1974. In 85, Bernardino made it a threesome. They're still the only riders ever to do it. So far, that is. By the end of the tour, of course, Miguel Indurain hoped to be turning that into a table for 4. He has got a lot of competition this year, though, so let's look at the man whose mission, should they choose to accept it, is to stop San Miguel. For the 3rd year running, the hopes of the non-Spanish speaking world in general and the Channel 4 ratings department in particular will be riding on Tony Rominger. He's ranked #1 in the world this season with 11 wins, including victory in Indurain's usual warm-up lap for the Tour, the Giro d'Italia. He's also the new holder of the world hour record. In short, Rominger's at his peak. And if that's not good enough to win the Tour at the age of 34, then it probably never will be. Rominger's last chance will be Yevgeny Berzin's first. The Russian already knows what it's like to beat Indurain in a major Tour, though. He did it in his adopted home of Italy 2 years ago. Unfortunately, Yevgeny's got a language problem. His Italian seems to be limited to the words prima and donna. His teammates say they support him, but then the cabinet says that about John Major, and nobody believes them. Zenon Jaskula finished an impressive 3rd in the Tour in 1993. But last year his team wasn't invited. This year they were only a late addition after Le Groupement dropped out. He had a good ride in the Tour of Switzerland, where he also finished 3rd. He should be a force this year. Richard Virenque is the most popular rider in France, and last year he gave the home fans plenty to cheer, taking the King of the Mountains jersey. This year, though, he's after the general classification. His whole season has been designed around securing a place on the podium in Paris. Alex Zuller represents the post-Rominger generation of Swiss hopes. He's having his best season as a pro. If the costume changes don't kill him, that should be reflected in his best ever Tour placing. Since his horrifying crash on stage 1 last year, Laurent Jalabert has been rebuilt, apparently with spare parts from Sean Kelly. Even Kelly, though, never achieved the spring triple of wins in Paris-Nice, Milan-San Remo and the Criterium International. Jalabert's perhaps not the same sprinter he was before the crash, but the way he's riding, he hasn't needed to be. The revelation of the mountain stages last year was the relentless attacking of Marco Pantani, the flying Vulcan. He's on his way back from injury this year, so his form's uncertain. But if he's fit, he'll be the man to beat for the polka dot jersey. In the sprints, it'll be a battle for elbow room between Chippo and Abdu. This year, Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov has the chance to equal Sean Kelly's record of 4 green jerseys. There'll be stiff competition from Jalabert. Cipollini, meanwhile, will be looking for a stage win early on before the going gets steep. The sweat starts to ruin his hair. Only joking, Harry, although his hair is a good 6 inches longer than it was when he wore the yellow jersey a couple of years ago. Could slow him down if today's stage comes down to a bunch sprint. Let's go back to the racing now. Here's Phil.
Well, thanks, Gary, and of course Miguel Indurain trying for 5 times this year, but right now the man who was trying to win the stage has just been swept up by a speeding big peloton here, led by Lotto, and they'll be thinking of riders like Andre Schmil for the first prize. But watch out for these light blue jerseys, because they've got 2 sprinters on the Mercatoni Uno team, Silvio Martinello and the great Mario Cipollini. They have been largely responsible for bringing down the gap on that lone leader, Eric Decker, and they've done a good job.
Well, Casarama were banking on that. I think that's why they let Eric Decker take the lead like that, because they knew that the teams of the sprinters, like the light blue jerseys of the Mercatone Uno team and the red and black jerseys of Lotto, would come to the front and close them down. But that could be very dangerous for them as well, because in the next few kilometers there's going to be the last bonus sprint of the day, which will give 6 seconds to the winner over the line. And you may well see somebody like Francis Moreau of the GAN team try and jump out of the peloton to get that, because he's just 4 seconds behind Jackie Durand in the overall standings. But the teams of the sprinters here are doing a fantastic job at the front, lifting the pace, and we can't be too far now from that sprint, which should be just around the corner.
And all of the Lotto team have got themselves nicely positioned. They're being led by Sammy Morels, back in the Tour for the first time for 3 years, I think, for little Sammy. Had his season interrupted a few years back when he broke his leg, and now the leader taking over is Mario de Klerk. No relation to Peter de Klerk, by the way, who is today showing he wants to challenge in this early period for the King of the Mountains. He lies second overall after today, behind Francois Simon. And down in the centre of our picture, you can see the white stripe on the red jersey. That is the new champion of Denmark, Bjarne Riis, who has won the title and is now trying to fly the colours. He usually rides a good Tour de France, and certainly has these past 2 years. News reaching us too, there has been a crash at the back of the bunch about 2 kilometres ago, and one of the riders who has crashed is Jan Zverada. One of the big sprinters has gone down. Now, he's not hurt, but he has been delayed, and earlier on he was the winner of the sprint at Sable d'Or-les-Pins, and I'm sure would have been looking for victory at the finish today. Now he's an awful lot of work to do to get back through the bunch. And the boys in the light blue, thinking of primarily, I would say, Cipollini, who has tremendous form. He's won more than a dozen races this year, and Cipollini knows that there aren't too many days in this year's Tour de France where he'll have the shot at being first over the line. But the finish here, Paul, at Lannion, is not purely a Cipollini finish.
It's not purely a sprinter's finish either, and it may well suit somebody more like André Chamil or Laurent Jalabert, the men who seem to have lost a lot of their pure speed, because this finish climbs up 500 meters. But men who take the risks as we come into the final few kilometers will be the men that we'll see at the front, because there are 1 or 2 very dangerous corners, and you see the ground is still very wet out there and very slippery. And in fact, the organization have put an awful lot of straw bales into the corners to make sure that it's safe for the riders, because there are very tight, narrow streets here in the finish area.
And talking of sprinters, we mustn't forget Wilfried Nellison, the rider who was involved along with Laurent Jalabert in that terrible crash in Armentières, the last stage of the first stage yesterday. There's Jalabert in pink, riding in the centre now, and quite clearly thinking of a good result today, because wouldn't it be nice if after lying on the road on the end of the first stage, you had the chance to win the first stage this year. Miguel Indurain, Jalabert choosing a good wheel to follow, riding in the centre there, and wears, of course, #1 as the winner of the Tour, not just last year, but of the past 4 years. But I was saying about Wilfried Nellison, who won just recently for the 2nd time in succession the Belgian Championship. He is also a candidate for victory today, and that is why the Lotto team have played their part in closing this race down as well.
Well, Indurain being extremely intelligent today to ride near to the front in a field like this, because it is very, very dangerous, especially in these conditions, as you ride further back down the pack, because you get riders touching their brakes and little movements in the peloton at the front, and that causes a wave that goes down the whole of the pack, and that's why we're having these crashes like we've had in the last few kilometers. So Indurain at the front obviously got a lot of power and keeping out of trouble.
Rosario Fina is the rider who's come through now, replacing Rudy Verdonk at the front. Rudy Verdonk, by the way, was runner-up in the Kellogg's Tour of Britain a few years ago, and he too making a reappearance in the Tour de France. And this is Antonio Politano. These Italian riders, the workhorses of the Mercatone Uno team, who will expect at the end to really produce the goods, and Cipollini will win the day. Farazain, the Lotto rider, and this is Donati riding his first Tour de France, getting the feel of things very early on.
We may well get a dress rehearsal here, about a kilometre to go before the sprint, 500 metres now, and you can see it's still the teams of the sprinters at the front, but watch out for somebody trying to leap out of the pack to try and get those bonus points.
You might like to know that only 39 of the 189 starters yesterday are first-timers to the Tour de France. It really is something for the experienced men, and team managers employing young riders rarely put them in the Tour de France for the first 2 years. They like them to get used to the professional circuit, which is a tough circuit. It is really cutthroat in that big bunch before they put them in the greatest race in the world. 219 kilometres covered of the 233 scheduled. There's the flashing yellow line to tell us where we are. Little hill coming up, and the rider on the left in the green jersey is Laurent, who is in second place overall today.
In fact, he keeps looking over his shoulder to see what the position of the yellow jersey Jackie Durand is, because he actually there's a great spirit in this Castorama team that a few years ago they had a few problems in. There was a fight in the team because there were so many riders close to the yellow jersey, and in fact one of them stole a couple of bonuses and took the jersey away from one of his teammates, but somebody has leapt out. This may well be Fidanza of the Polti team, who's trying to get those 6 seconds bonus, which would be a good move for Jackie Durand, the overall leader at the moment, as Fidanza jumps clear of the rest of the field and there's an Once rider chasing him down.
And the Polti rider, if it is Giovanni Fidanza, he's a great sprinter, but the Once boys are coming back at him very, very quickly here. 50 metres to the line, and Fidanza's made a big mistake there as he loses out to the Polti rider, who takes it, and it looks to us as though Jalabert himself has shown us he is a very, very good uphill sprinter. Now there's a bonus that's gone the way of a race favourite. Laurent Jalabert taking the 6 seconds on the line.
And not very far away there as well. I think Miguel Indurain was the man who chased down Jalabert himself. He's obviously a little bit worried about Jalabert there, moving to the front. Miguel Indurain himself chased down Jalabert, who looks over his shoulder to see what damage was done on that climb up to the bonus sprint place there.
And it seems the big men flexing their legs, Paul. Not only Indurain on the right alongside the pink jersey Jalabert, but the Motorola colours, that blue and red in front, is Valvaro Mejia, who is expected to ride well in the mountains, also coming out to play at that small time bonus sprint. Leaving us now just the big finish, and to remind you, a 20-second bonus for the win, followed by 12 for the second, 8 for the third. These early days, those bonuses matter. It can mean the difference of leading the Tour de France for the one and only time in your career or not. That's why they chase the seconds. Let's see now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the Mercatoni Uno boys at the front now, and there's a number of teams willing to help them in the speed. They know if they keep the speed high, then there's nobody can get off the front and spoil the day for the sprinters. That's the theory. They now pass under the 10 kilometres to go banner. Steve Bauer of Motorola coming in on the far right of our picture now, the vastly experienced Canadian.
In fact, he was moving up there to bring his team leader up there, Lance Armstrong, to the front of the main pack, and it may well be because of the 1 or 2 climbs as we get into the finish that he's trying to place Armstrong there to try and jump clear towards the end of the stage today.
And this on a day we never thought Armstrong would try to win a stage.
Well, it's a tough area around here in Britain. There's lots of launch pads for anybody, but the race really being held at the moment by the teams of the sprinters. The Mercatoni Uno team here in the pale blue are doing a superb job, and waiting in the shadows there just a little bit further back, you can see the red and black jerseys of the Lotto team. If there's any slowing down by Mercatoni, they will take over and try and put their man Wilfred Nelson back to the front of the pack. As you look back down the pack now, you can see lots of riders trying to move their own team leaders up to the front there, but the riders at the front, all they're thinking about at the moment is getting their sprinter to the finish in the best possible situation. And while these riders are working hard at the front, there are riders crashing at the back, and that's why it's so important for men like Miguel Indurain on the right-hand side of the picture to stay up near the front and out of danger.
And in fact, 4 riders have fallen at the back of the race, including Nelson Rodriguez, the man who won a stage in the Alps last year, and also the rider who's been in the thick of the battle for the King of the Mountains this year, Peter de Klerk, has gone down. 4 riders have fallen, and that will disrupt the chase, I think. And also Rudy Verdonk, well, we've just seen him at the front, so he went to the back at the wrong moment. He's been involved in a crash. So 2 of the Lotto team have gone down, and there they are, in fact, and putting themselves back together. The rider who is on the floor there looks as though it's Giuseppe Citterio from the AKI team, and he's helped up, and Verdonk is the rider being pushed off back into the fray. And these are the dangers that we keep on emphasizing on these opening days of the Tour de France, and for this reason the big stars try to keep out of them by riding near the front of the race.
Everybody's nervous, everybody wants to stay at the front of the pack, and people are taking risks. And in situations and conditions like this, with it being so damp, the brakes don't respond quite as well as they would do in dry conditions, and that's what happens. One or two riders will touch wheels and we'll get a small crash like that. At the front, it's still the same situation. It's the blue jerseys that we've seen for the last few kilometers of the Mercatone Uno team. They're doing all the work at the front to try and get Mario Cipollini, Super Mario, the man who's won round about 15 races so far this year, get him up to the front in the best possible situation. But it's going to be very difficult when we come into the town, because I really feel that with riders taking the risks, the first stage of the Tour de France is always a very scary prospect.
Well, you know better than anybody, Paul. You've been up as high as 5th overall in the Tour de France in these early stages. Because you weren't a bad sprinter yourself, I'll give you that.
Well, I did take one or two risks because I was not really that good as a sprinter, but it's just the fact that knowing where to place yourself in a bunch like this, sometimes you can actually just stay at the front and stay just behind the sprinters, and you can finish quite easily in the top 10, but you do sometimes have to have nerves of steel, especially on these wet roundabouts and coming into the small towns, because once you break coming into the final few kilometers of the stage of the Tour de France, you can lose 5 or 10 or even 15 places in one corner.
And you don't get them back without a fight. There we are, just 6 kilometers now from the finish. The domestiques will shortly feel their job is done. They'll expect to see their team leaders, the big sprinters, arriving at the front of this race, and that we should be in for a treat. But it's the last 3 kilometers which are very difficult, and the last kilometer is an excellent line for the sprinters. It's uphill, but it's straight. But the journey through the town of Lannion before they arrive in that last kilometer is very, very difficult indeed.
Another piece of information coming. One of the riders actually out of the back of the main field with the crash. There's Roberto Conti, the man who won the Alpe d'Huez stage last year in the Tour de France. But the action all happening here at the front, and I keep seeing the shadow of Francis Moreau, the man who is in 3rd place overall this morning. He may well be looking for an opportunity to try and leap out of this pack, because for him it would be a great way of saving the withdrawal of Chris Boardman yesterday, and it looked as if there was a slight slowing down into that corner, and this is what's going to happen all the time now as we come into the town of Lannion. People will take risks, and that is when we could well get crashes. Again, there's another crash being announced at the back of the main field there. In fact, it's Fabian Jecker of the Festina squad who's gone down.
We just saw there from the helicopter a little bulge in the bunch, and in fact riders, and here we can have a look at it again now. Watch the center of the picture as they make the corner. There's a shunt again in the middle as riders fall down. One of those there on the far left of our screen, dead center now, and the riders managing to slow down and get round the tangle of machinery down there. And this is because of the slippery road. Although the rain has indeed stopped, the road is still very, very dangerous.
Another rider who was slowed down by that crash there was also Zenon Yaskula, the man who came into the Tour de France at the very last moment when Aki were brought in to replace the Groupement team from France that was actually dissolved last Tuesday. So he's a man who was looking to ride well in the overall standings, and it just goes to show and tell you how important it is to ride near to the front of this main pack, which is why in 4th position there is Miguel Indurain riding at the front, because he realizes how dangerous it is. He doesn't want to lose any time in a stupid little crash like that in the final few kilometers of a race.
So just inside, 5 kilometers to go. Eros Poli, the man who went for a big adventure across Mont Ventoux last year to win a stage, which isn't bad for a non-climber in Provence. And there he is now doing his real job in the Tour de France, which is being a workhorse of Martinelli. But 1 or 2 riders have gone around the other side of the carriageway, and they are in a spot of difficulty now. I don't know how they got there, but they have shot off on the wrong side of the barriers, and I've never seen that in my life before, Paul.
Well, that's the first time I've seen that. Very often you come up to a roundabout like that, and you know the riders know that they can split and get back round the other side. I think the rider who went down the wrong side of the road there was in fact Francis Moreau, and he's been looking all the time for an opportunity to try and slip clear of this pack, because he realizes it would be a great chance for him to try and get the yellow jersey. It would be superb for the Gann team, having lost Chris Boardman yesterday. Now he's going to have an awful time trying to get back in, and this is going to happen all the way into the race. You can see, in fact, the main pack is starting to splinter a little bit back there, and still it's always Mercatone at the front, and they really have total confidence in Mario Cipollini. But Wilfred Nellison, the sprinter from Belgium, won't be too far back in this bunch.
Oh, Paulo Francis Moreau there. The only way back is to get off his bike and climb over the barriers, and it's a pity our cameras weren't there to show him doing that. Anyway, the race continues at quite a pace at the front here now, as Eros Poli is joined by Miguel Indurain, who's come to the front now to keep the pace high as well. What a turn-up for the buck if Indurain pulled out a victory. Remember, Indurain has never won a road racing stage of the Tour de France since he started his winning sequence of 4 overall victories. He has indeed won 8 time trial stages.
Well, this is quite exceptional to see this, and in fact, on the right-hand side of the road, there's Claudio Chiappucci, El Diablo himself, who's going to have a go. There's still crashes going on at the back of the pack, but Chiappucci realizes that there's a chance of exploding the main field on these tricky roads into Lannion here, and looking back down the main pack there, I could see a slight amount of daylight appearing there, and it may well be that there'll be a split in the main field. Chiappucci's got the gap at the moment, and he's the kind of rider who will take risks. This is the dangerous corner I was talking about, and Chiappucci's going around it in first place.
A tight right-hand bend, the barriers are holding the riders in tightly. There you can see better from our camera bike, and Chiappucci has chosen exactly the place to go. It's almost as if he knows this town, because he knows if he can get a gap in those twists, then he might hang on the climb up to the finish. He's about 1.5 kilometers to go. We'll shortly see the red kite of last kilometer, and Claudio Chiappucci is trying to surprise them all.
But what a man El Diablo is. He'll take all the risks possible. It's the Lotto team at the front trying to get back into contention here, but El Diablo, a man on his own, really does have a chance to pull this off. There are 2 or 3 dangerous corners to go. The Lotto team behind, putting the pressure on to try and get back to Claudio Chiappucci, and it looks as if they're having a great deal of difficulty. 2 kilometers to go. It's the distance that Claudio Chiappucci has to go through now.
So now the climb will shortly start. It really commences around about the 1 kilometer banner, and I think there's a little bit of argy-bargy at the back there. In fact, the riders almost swung right across into that barrier.
What happened there, the rider from Lotto actually sat up and he swung across the road to let somebody else come through, and in doing that he nearly took out Miguel Indurain himself. But look, Indurain has got his teammates at the front, and Chiappucci is now back in the fold.
So Benesto have brought back Claudio Chiappucci, and the Benesto boys, although setting the pace, they're now giving it back to Mercatoni Uno, who will now start to wind it up if they can. But look at Jackie Giron, the man in the yellow jersey, and they always say that when you pull on the golden fleece of the Tour de France, you become 2 men. And Jackie Giron at 1 kilometer to go is right up there with the front runners. They now try to lead out the men who should win, the sprinters themselves. Wilfred Nellison is the rider in black on the far left of our screen. He is the rider who indeed crashed on the finish at Armentières. Johan Museo is the big man in the center with the white crash helmet on, but the sprinters now lining up, and still we are looking for Mario Cipollini to see if he can pull out the sprint that will really matter here too. This is going to be a very formidable sprint now, and in fact Wilfred Nellison is coming up on the left-hand side as they start the climb up towards the finishing line now. Surely Nellison, the sprinter, isn't going to find it on this hill, but they've slowed down, and that's going to favour Wilfred Nellison. Abdou Japarov is up here as well in the white, so too is Laurent Jalabert. Jalabert is tucked in there nicely as well, and Eric Zabel is the rider from the Telecom team. There is Cipollini, he's there now with the long hair and waiting. In fact, it looks to me as though in fact Cipollini has sat up and dropped away. That's the big man in yellow who's fallen out of it, and in fact the Mercatoni Uno riders don't realise they're wasting their time now. Well, maybe they do, because they've gone off the front. Nellison is now going. Abdou Japarov, this is a terrible climb for sprinters. Jalabert is starting to sprint. Abdou Japarov has got his wheel. Fabio Baldato has come in 3rd place. This is going to be some sprint now. Jalabert taking on Baldato. I don't think Abdou has got it this time. Baldato is bursting for the line now. Fabio Baldato is going to take this stage. His first Tour de France. He gets his victory. Jalabert will be 2nd, and somewhere in 3rd or 4th will be Abdou Japarov. Well, it wasn't really a sprinter's finish. You saw how they laboured, but at the end of the day, the sprinters did have it. And now you can see just how hard Laurent Jalabert tried here to steal a march over his rivals. It looked for a moment as though he was going to take it, and then this terrific burst from Fabio Baldato, who is a great single-day classic rider. He came out of the pack, and then when he saw the finishing line, he really turned it on in style, forcing Jalabert a full length behind him, and Abdou Japarov would take 3rd place. And there, from a different angle, you can see the clear victory of Fabio Baldato, followed by Jalabert, and there's the tight sprint for 3rd. No doubt about it, it was indeed Jamaluddin Abdou Japarov. A great victory in the end for the Italian Fabio Baldato ahead of Laurent Jalabert, the rider who crashed at the end of the first stage a year ago. He finishes second. And in third place, the sprinter Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov. So Baldato, riding his first Tour de France at the end of the first full day of racing, gets the winner's flowers and is on the podium tonight. But it wasn't good news for all of the riders. The victim of that crash near the end, Roberto Conti. He won in Alpe d'Huez last year. Well, today he came in 10 minutes and 36 seconds behind. The overall situation, Jackie Duron keeps the leader's yellow jersey. He won yesterday in Saint-Brieuc. He is 2 seconds ahead of Laurent Brochard and Thierry Laurent. Largely, the overall positions were unchanged. Well, for Jackie Duron, it may have been a surprise he won yesterday, but he really did ride very, very well indeed today to defend his yellow jersey in the Tour de France. How long will he keep it? And so the second day of the Tour de France comes to an end. It's the day that Chris Bourbon flew home with a broken ankle and a broken wrist. And in this bad weather, the people of Brittany must quite wonder what they've done to deserve this. Well, our programme tomorrow night comes to you at 6:30. And at least one man was very happy with the way his stage of the Tour de France went today, Fabio Baldato. He now joins an exclusive club of stage winners. Until tomorrow night, goodbye.
The official Channel 4 Tour de France magazine priced.
For 2 days, Brittany has done its best to dampen the spirit of the Tour de France, but the riders, as always, showed their total commitment to the finest of sporting conflict. And for 2 riders, the rain brought only tears of joy. Italian Tour first-timer Fabio Baldato won yesterday in Lannion. He powered away from Laurent Jalabert and is now a serious contender for the green jersey competition. But for the moment, the leader's yellow jersey stays with Jackie Duron. The ex-champion of France showed he could defend as well as win. For these two, the rain has been a welcome happening. Duron is the leader of the race now by 2 seconds from the Frenchman Laurent Brochard and Thierry Laurent. Gone from the leaderboard is France's Francis Moreau, who went the wrong side of the barriers yesterday and failed to catch up. He lost 24 seconds. And this morning, all of the water is thankfully underfoot. Well, we're not going to need factor 25 just yet, but at least the sun is doing its best to shine here at Perros-Guirec on the Brittany coastline. Well, yesterday, Jackie Duron showed us just what a good bike rider he really is, but he's put a lot of pressure now on his Castorama team. In fact, pressure that they never really anticipated, but they are well equipped to handle it, as Paul Sherwin tells us.
The Castorama team have one of the best managers in the business to guide them, Cyril Guimard, the man who helped Bernard Hinault, Greg LeMond and Laurent Fignon to victories in the Tour de France. Holding the leader's yellow jersey is important for a team, but with the team time trial tomorrow, it's also necessary not to use up too much energy. Yesterday, Cyril Guimard played his cards correctly.
In the middle of the race, when the lone escaper, Eric Decker, had a lead of 2 minutes, he ordered the team to chase. The defence of the yellow jersey beginning at this point. During this period, the team were expending a lot of energy. When Decker's lead dropped to 1 minute, Guimard made the tactical decision to have the team stop chasing, knowing that the teams of the sprinters would take over. And they did. The combined power of the Mercatone Uno team and the Lotto squad brought Decker back into the fold. The defence of the yellow jersey had been successful, without expending too much energy.
And it's another day in the hot seat for the Castorama, because today it's over 235 kilometres from Perros-Guillac to Vitré. The race leaves the Côte d'Amour and enters the department of the Île-et-Vilaine. 3 sprints and a small climb en route, and the race never goes above 700 feet over sea level. And a more pleasant day as well, as the 188 riders are moving away from the attractive Breton town of fine beaches and jagged coastline. For Jackie Duron, though, the fairy tale will continue, everyone wondering if today will be the final chapter. At the first sprint, after 16 kilometres, Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov snatches the 6-second time bonus, followed over by the top sprinters Mario Cipollini and Laurent Jalabert. And that sprint for third place by Jalabert has claimed him back 2 seconds. He's now within 5 seconds of Duron's jersey. But for the French GAN team, their nightmare Tour de France continued. After losing Chris Bourman on Saturday, the French champion Eddy Seigneur, the winner of the final stage into Paris a year ago, has given up the race. Apparently, he is very ill.
Much better weather conditions today. It's expected to be dry with just a slight risk of rain later in the afternoon. Temperatures won't exceed 18 degrees Celsius, but with a strong westerly wind, it should help the riders towards the finish in Vitré.
And at Saint-Maine-le-Grand, the second sprint, this narrow victory in favour of Laurent Jalabert in the pink has given him a 6-second time bonus. He is now the overall leader of the Tour de France on the road by a single second. And with 48 kilometres to go on the stage, Jackie Duron is in even more trouble. Well, the arm is up of Jackie Duron, the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, and when you start to lose your grip on the race, then things always seem to start to go wrong as well. He has a flat front tyre, and he was just on the attack at the time it happened. He's come back into the field. In fact, all of his team are now waving at the service, because the fast change will be absolutely crucial here. He's still very much in with a chance of taking the time back in the race lead, because there's still a time bonus sprint to come, and of course the time bonus at the finish. I'm a little bit surprised, Paul, that his own teammates haven't stopped and given him a bike there.
Well, the race isn't going at full bore at the moment. There's a bit of disorganisation as he's running up the road. In fact, one of his teammates may have stopped, but there's Patrice Charlet, a northeast from the north of France, his mechanic, getting the front wheel in there. A little bit of a panic for Jackie Duron. His teammates were waiting for him. They didn't give him a quick change, but he's up and back on his bike again, and he'll soon be back in the main field. But a bit of panic, I think.
And now the whole field are actually in pursuit of 2 breakaways. Eric van der Aarden of the Brasilia team from Italy, and Frans Maassen from the Nobel team, who's a Dutchman. And they're 28 kilometres from the finish. Jackie Duron has safely got back into the field, but it was a tough ride, and his teammates had to wait and take him back into the safety of the big peloton. But all of the work now being done, not by the Castorama, of course, but by the men who now have Laurent Jalabert on the team, the Once team, because now they want those 2 leaders back and give Jalabert another shot, Paul, at a time bonus sprint.
They do. There'll be a 6-second time bonus sprint and just a few kilometres up the road, but there's still 20 seconds on the finish line. 20 seconds for the first man, 12 for the second, and 8 seconds for the third. But the Once have decided that Laurent Jalabert is definitely their man, which is why you can see all of those pink jerseys of the Once squad at the front. Number 61 in the middle of them is Laurent Jalabert. These 2 men at the front here are Eric van der Aarden in the blue jersey, Frans Maassen just behind him in the red, white and black jersey of Novell. They're trying to upset the apple cart.
Well, they both won stages before. In fact, van der Aarden has won 5 stages over his career in the Tour de France, and the green jersey, which he won in 1986, while Frans Maassen won a stage in 1990, Futuroscope, and has been riding the Tour de France since 1988. They've dangled out front. The maximum they've had, in fact, was just over 1 minute, and now it's down to inside 30 seconds, round about 20 seconds, we think. Overall, Masson is 1 minute and 21 seconds behind the leader, and Van der Aarde 1 minute and 51 seconds. So there's no real chance of them taking yellow, but the stage win is what they're trying to pick up. And there's the gap from our helicopter cameras, and the boys in pink chasing it down slowly but surely. I'm not sure they'll gain contact, though, before that sprint for 6 seconds comes up. And I'm sure everybody at home would like to know the latest on Chris Bourbon, who crashed out of the Tour de France with broken bones in the Prologue time trial. Well, Chris at this very moment is recovering from an operation on his ankle, which has been pinned during a 90-minute operation, which was a little bit more complicated than expected, but the surgeons say it will heal fine. And Chris, you have all our best wishes here at Channel 4, and we look forward to you defending with great success your World Championships when you go to Colombia in October. But I'm afraid it's not good news for your team, because earlier we showed you pictures of the retirement of the other strong man in Chris's GAN team, and that's Eddie Seigneur, the champion of France. So they've lost 2 of their 9 men, and this race has barely started.
As we come under the banner with 20 kilometers to go, it must be just around this corner when these 2 riders will see the banner for the hotspot sprint.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me, in fact, if these 2 don't even sprint for the banner in 500 meters time, because although there is a prize for the first 2 riders, it's not this prize they're hunting. Frans Masson has the lead at the moment, then Eric van der Aarde. Van der Aarde in his days was a great sprinter as well as a great time trial rider, but he's lost a little bit of that. I suppose you do when you get a little bit older.
So that's one of the first things to go. And the thing that a rider like Eric van der Aarde has also probably lost is his ability to climb, but he has really started to ride well in the last couple of years, especially when to it. And this is in fact a good move by Jackie Durand. He's tried to surprise Laurent Jalabert because he could get the 2 seconds back, but straight away there's an Once rider on him.
And the Once rider must beat him, because the 3rd place gets 2 seconds, and that's Jalabert who's jumped him straight away. Well, Jalabert knows the men to mark. He followed the yellow jersey and goes by with the greatest of ease, while in fact it's Frans Masson who takes the 1st place from Eric van der Aarde. This is going to put Jalabert 3 seconds ahead in the Tour de France, because he is taking the 3rd place bonus of 2 seconds at the sprint. He's doing just enough to make sure that Jackie Durand does not creep up on him. That's the white line, 2 seconds in the bag. So Laurent Jalabert now leads the Tour de France by 3 seconds, with the finish still to come. What a great tactic. So the race is coming slowly together. I'm sure they'll all be together in the next few kilometers, and then we'll be down for the big finish. We'll take a break.
After the break, an update on last year's terrible Stage 1 crash, and a look at the worst ever Tour accident, which happened in the Parc des Princes Velodrome on the last day of the 1958 race. That's in a couple of minutes. Dramatic still from 1958 captures the moment when a stadium employee stepped out onto the track of the Parc des Princes Velodrome, right into the path of French rider André Darrigade. The park keeper, who ironically had been trying to clear photographers off the track, died from his injuries. Darrigade recovered and returned to racing.
You know, the first thing I thought of when I saw that photograph was the terrible crash on Stage 1 in Armentières last year, when a policeman stepped out in front of the final bunch sprint. Thankfully, no one died in that accident, but Wilfred Nellison and Laurent Jalabert were seriously hurt. Jalabert in particular, though, has made an amazing recovery.
As they come up towards the line, Nellison is taking... Oh, and they've gone! They've gone one after the other. They've hit...
In the time it took a gendarme to step out into the road to take a picture, the Tour de France went from the only thing on Laurent Jalabert's mind to the last thing.
J'ai d'abord eu peur pour ma santé avant tout, puis c'est vrai qu'à ce moment-là, le cyclisme, ça comptait plus, quoi.
Jalabert suffered multiple injuries, including a broken jaw. But not only has he returned to racing, he's actually a better rider than he was before the accident. This season, he dominated the early spring classics like no one in history, winning the unprecedented triple of Paris-Nice, Milan-San Remo and the Criterium International. Everyone can see the difference, except apparently the man himself.
La personne, je crois qu'il n'y en a pas beaucoup. La grosse différence, elle est dans les résultats, quoi, je crois.
But actually, it's more than just the results. Jalabert was a pure sprinter before the accident. Now he has all-round power. Sooner or later, though, he knows he's going to have to test his nerve in a close sprint finish.
Pour l'instant, j'ai pas fait beaucoup de sprints, mais les quelques-uns que j'ai pu faire, il n'y a pas eu de peur, quoi. qu'on va voir. J'appréhende surtout la première étape du Tour.
Happily, Laurent survived stage 1 intact this year, and the weight of home expectation is now on him to recapture the green jersey he won in 1992. But the man himself is more interested, at least initially, in stage wins.
Je crois que c'est un objectif que je peux atteindre, qui n'est pas facile à atteindre, donc déjà je vais m'en tenir à ça. La lutte pour le maillot vert, bon, ça dépendra un petit peu de la seconde partie du Tour. On va voir déjà après la montagne qui c'est qui reste dangereux pour le maillot vert, quoi.
The other rider hurt in that stage 1 crash, Wilfred Nellison, has also made a full recovery, by the way, and he's back on this year's Tour. Although these days the Belgian champion is putting his faith in a higher power than the race organisation. When we caught up with him at the start of this morning stage, he was sporting a St Christopher on his top tube. We also phoned the police in Armentières, and they say the officer involved is also back on duty, although hopefully not traffic duty. Back to the racing.
And there are the two leaders down there. They've just been brought back into the fray. The far right in the white is in fact Frans Maassen. Van der Aarden has done the classic move. As they've come up to them, he's gone again in the hope that this time they'll let him go. But I'm not so sure they're thinking like that.
Definitely not. Many of the sprinters teams have come to the front there. I saw the Lotto squad sending Herman Frison just a few moments ago there to try and bring it all back together for Wilfred Nellison. But an excellent move by Eric van der Aarden, trying to get clear one last time, but it won't be very long, I don't think, before he gets reeled into the pack. And there's a lot of crashes at the back. Another man going down here from the Festina squad that looked very much to me, in fact, as if that was Pascal Hervé, one of the revelations on the Festina squad last year, and that's Bruno Roussel pushing him back into the race.
Well, that's a horrible sight if you look over your shoulder, Eric, because the cavalry is right behind, and he's given up, and here they come.
And what a charge it's going to be down to the finish line down in here in Vitré, because there are so many of the top sprinters in this main pack from all over the world would like to take the stage victory. It's the Lotto team at the front in the red and black doing the work there for the man from Belgium, Wilfred Nellison. In second place, in fact, is the Italian champion Gianni Bugno, who's a teammate of Fabio Baldato, the man who took the stage victory yesterday. And in the pink jerseys of Telecom will be Eric Zabel.
And TVM now having a little dig at the front. A team which Robert Miller used to ride for. He chose to change teams this year, and sadly he is not in the Tour de France when his new team, Le Groupement, a French team, pulled out of the whole sport just 4 days before this race started. And as a result, Robert Miller, who had great form, the new British champion, didn't get his chance to ride in his 12th Tour de France. Unlike Sean Yates, of course, who is in this race and riding in his 12th Tour de France, and equaling the record set by the Yorkshireman Barry Hoban.
This is Frattini from the Gaywiz team. He, in fact, recently won the Grand Prix of Frankfurt, which was a surprise to win for him. But the Gaywiz team are such a strong team, but it's the cohesion of all the riders that I think gives them their success.
10-kilometre banner flying overhead, and Frattini is trying to bring the Gaywiz team back into the action. They were the team of the early season last year, but they haven't done quite so well this year. As Paul just said, Frattini was the surprise winner of the World Cup event, the Grand Prix Frankfurt in Germany. But apart from that, they haven't featured like they have in previous early season races.
Another man there from TVM looking for a gap. That was Jesper Skibby, I think, trying to slip clear. A man who always looks for the gap at the end of a race like this. He's not a superb sprinter, but he won a brilliant stage and a hilltop finish a couple of years ago. It took everybody by surprise, and he just managed to hold off. And whenever you get to the end of a race like this, Skibby's looking for a break.
And this is Gianni Bugno, who's paying a lot of attention to the front of the race today. On the back there, in the lamprey colours, that's the blue and the mauve, is Jan Zverada, who was my tip for the victory yesterday, but he fell off as he approached the finish and didn't get his shot at the gold medal.
Well, everybody has a chance today, but at the moment it looks very much as if the Once have moved over to the left of the road to give a little bit of shelter to the rest of the riders in here, and everybody started to come back together. The bald figure just going off this picture there was Marco Pantani. A little bit further back, another balding figure, which seems to be the message of the day these days, of Armand de las Cuevas.
And the attack again from Frattini. He's just been brought back once and he's gone again. Well, Gaywiz are deciding they're not going to fall into the sprinter's hand, but the sprinter chases. Just look at the strength of Laurent Jalabert. He knows he's in yellow. He's launched another attack to mark this attack by Frattini. Jalabert's had a marvellous, marvellous season and taken away completely the tragedy of 1 year ago. This year he has won 14 races, and that despite the fact that midway through the season he decided to take a layoff of 5 weeks so he wouldn't become stale. He came back just as good as he was when he left. Tremendous achievement by Laurent Jalabert. Well, the kilometres tumbling down. This is now the town of Victories. And the riders go into the town, traverse the town, and then pick their way out to the long, long finishing straight, which is almost 2 kilometres of perfectly straight road. Normally, a real playground for the sprinters. But Laurent Jalabert, who is Bernard Hinault, the 5 times winner of the Tour de France, has said that Laurent Jalabert shouldn't imagine himself to be a sprinter. He should look at himself as to be a real classic rider who could win the Tour de France. And, you know, Jalabert, well, if he finds himself in yellow, as he seems now certain to do tonight, he has got to respect the reputation of Bernard Hinault and consider whether he can, in fact, go for the victory in the Tour de France and not just for the green points jersey. But we'll know more about that as the weeks unfold. Into the town of Victories, another one of these beautiful little French towns.
I think that's Andrea Taffy trying to go through there at the moment. At the back, there are a lot of riders scrambling to try and get back into contention. One man who's missed this sprint, this split, is the sprinter Wilfred Nellison, and I think it may well be too late for him to get back into contention for the sprint. At the front, it's the Mapei GB team. Andrea Taffy trying to go clear at the moment. 3 kilometres to go, and it's a very tough climb, this.
And Taffy, the teammate of Tony Rominger. He'll be forced into action to defend for Rominger, I'm sure, later on in this tour, but right now he's got freedom to go alone. He has had an absolutely brilliant season, Andrea Taffy, in the workhorse position for Rominger. But now he's got his chance, but the counter move is coming, and very quickly indeed they've swept by him. And this is a Lamprey rider who's having an attack, and I'm wondering, in fact, if Maurizio Fondriest is trying to show his colours at the front. 2 kilometres from the finish.
One of the TVM riders slipped in behind there and looking very much to me as if again that was Jesper Skibby, the man who always looks for these moves at the end of a race. There's 1.5 kilometres to go now. This is Maurizio Fondriest on the front, putting the pressure on, shadowed by the TVM rider, but still not very far behind him. The whole of that group now being led by the Once team. They realise Laurent Jalabert is the man who could walk away with yellow tonight, but they'd love him to get the stage victory as well.
So Fondriest has gone clear. I'm not too sure who that TVM rider is. He's a big rider. It could be Henrik Verdant who's gone with him. But Fondriest, who was told that if he didn't take part as part of the Lamprey team, then his team wouldn't make the Tour de France. He thought that was the nearest you could come to blackmail, decided he had to ride the Tour. He's in fact been joined by Jesper Skibby here. That's the jester of the TVM team, but the man who is a brilliant rider as well when he's not clowning around with everybody, and now he's showing us his other side and the great talent he is too. Jesper Skibby has gone to the front. Well, I spoke to the Danish television earlier today and I said, well, your riders haven't won much so far. They said, don't worry, we're going to win plenty of stages. Well, now Skibby has made the move and they're inside 1.5 kilometres from the line with Fondriest. This is going to foil the sprinters, I think.
They may well have just moved at the right time. They're working very well together. There's no animosity. They realise that they can't look at each other and wait and try and cheat one out of the other. They're giving everything they've got, but right behind, the main field is boring down upon them. I think they've got about 50 metres lead at the moment. That may well just be enough, because just at the top there, you can see there is the Flamme Rouge, the red kite. They've got 1 kilometre to go, so it may well be that they've gone just a little bit too early, because this is a long, hard climb. And in fact, this looks like Andre Schmeel, the Lotto rider, who's come back in there.
Schmeel, the Lotto boys, we saw the Lotto team warming up the chase and they got nothing out of it yesterday, but now Schmeel has come, and this time Andre Schmeel has gone through. He led the World Cup last year. He was a brilliant winner last year at Paris-Roubaix, and he's just taken them on the fly. He's going into the last 700 or 800 metres now, and the reaction coming from Once for Jalabert, because the first 3 riders will receive bonuses of 20, 12 and 8, and Jalabert is trying to conserve his new lead in the Tour de France. Schmeel is trying just to conserve a few yards in the Tour de France as he comes up on the right of our picture, and the sprint with Fedegati is right behind him now. Martinello is coming through. Cipollini is in there as well, and so is Abdou Jabrov. They've got him on the line. They've got him on the line. Martinelli, Cipollini, Abdou Jabrov. That's the Aussie comes to the line. And Fedegati also, but Cipollini is coming clear now, and Cipollini's going to get it. Fedegati is taking him on board now as comes the green jersey too of Baldato. Now Abdou Jabrov. Cipollini gets it. Cipollini gets it on the line, and right alongside him there was in fact Giovanni Lombardi, was the teammate who came in on his side, and Abdu Japarov was there as well, and Baldato just behind them all. And now the sprint of the gap, and the yellow jersey, Jackie Gironi, he's out of the lead for sure now, brings home the rest. And here we are again, and just look at this now. It was in fact on the right, it was Giovanni Lombardi, the new Italian professional coming up, taking on Cipollini. They often dice together back home in Italy. Then came the white figure of Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov. On the far right is Laurent Jalabert, and in the green is Fabio Baldato. But today it's Mario Cipollini. So the self-acclaimed fastest man in the world shows a clean pair of wheels to some of the best sprinters. Mario Cipollini winning ahead of Giovanni Lombardi, Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov, and the winner yesterday, Fabio Baldato. So Cipollini on the podium for only the second time in his career in a Tour de France, but you know he almost didn't win when Jesper Skibby escaped near the end. Even the Dane was shocked at the speed the sprinters picked him up.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, you know, but well, I thought it was going a little bit more flat here, you know, but it was going a little bit uphill. But, well, it's the way of life is cycling, eh?
Try again after tomorrow.
Yeah, we try again. Maybe not after tomorrow, but someday, for sure.
Overall, there has been a change, and Laurent Jalabert is now the new leader of the Tour de France, a few seconds in front of the other Frenchman, Laurent Brochard. Sean Yates and Max Chiandri, the two British riders in the race, well, they finished safely in the main field today. They'll have their part to play tomorrow in their respective teams in the team time trial. But what a happy man Laurent Jalabert is. A year to the day when he crashed and was taken away from the race seriously injured. He now pulls on the yellow jersey as leader of the Tour de France. Well, while the celebrations go on, let's spare a thought today for the GAN team. They've now lost their best two riders. First Chris Boardman going out, and today their French champion Eddie Seigneur. But the speed merchants, well, they rode exceptionally well today, and you know they're now calling Mario Cipollini the Lion King because of those flowing locks. Tomorrow it's the team time trial over 67 kilometres. The riders going from Mayenne to Alençon. Surely the pack will reshuffle again. Until tomorrow night, goodbye. The two most horrendous crashes of 1994 involved Mario Cipollini and Laurent Jalabert. A year ago, Mario Cipollini survived this crash in the Tour of Spain, which ruined his season, but not his nerve. Yesterday, he produced his famous finishing sprint to win the second stage of the Tour de France in Vitré. Laurent Jalabert was the rider who was worst injured in this crash at Armentières in the Tour de France on July the 3rd, 1994. Only fate knows the path it takes, and on July the 3rd, 1995, he became the new leader of the Tour de France. Jalabert now leads the Tour by 5 seconds, while Britain's Max Chiandri is 58th and Sean Yates lies in 89th position. Great team tactics by the Spanish Once team yesterday to get Laurent Jalabert that coveted yellow jersey, but they must perform well as a group again today because it's the team time trial. Now, many leaders of the teams openly criticise this stage because they say it's an outmoded part of any Tour de France. The reason being, of course, they're only as strong as members of their own team, as Paul Sherwin explains.
A team consists of 9 riders, and the team time trial is the only event in the Tour de France that reflects the in-depth strength of the whole squad. The object is to cover today's distance between Mayenne and Alençon in the fastest possible time. The time is recorded when the 5th man crosses the line. In order to achieve this, the squad must adopt their most streamlined formation. Each rider will take a turn at the head of the line, forcing the pace. Once his turn is complete, he will swing off the front and take up a position in the slipstream of his teammates until it is his turn to hit the front again. To get the best from the whole team, each racer will ride to his maximum for the longest possible time, which often means that the team leader will make a sacrifice and leave the weaker riders behind to finish alone. But one thing a leader will always remember, he needs 5 men to stop the clock.
And here's the route they face. It's not entirely a flat one. The roads are very nice corrugations through the department of Mayenne, the Sarthe and Orme, where the race finishes. It's 67 kilometers from the beautiful town of Mayenne along to Alençon. A couple of time checks along the way to tell the riders just how they're going. And now down there on the start line, the Oncé team. And this team know their job today. It's an easy one. They've only got to record the best time and thereby increasing the overall lead of the man in yellow. Easier said than done.
Definitely, but they've got some extremely strong riders in there to help Laurent Jalabert. That would be Eric Breukink, Johan Brunel and Herman Diaz-Zabala, Melchior Mauri, the Spanish time trial champion. So when they get together, they will really produce a superb ride.
So Oncé are the third last team to go. All of the teams today starting at 5-minute intervals, and Laurent Jalabert well aware of the fact that it is the fifth man to cross the line who will stop the clock for the whole team, so they can only go as well as the fifth rider in the squad. Vitally important today. Many of the team leaders think this should not be part of the individual classification in the Tour de France, because the individual rider can have no control over what a team necessarily does.
But this is the French squad of Jean-François Bernard coming up now from Chazal, and they really aren't doing a superb ride. They've been fairly slow all the way out there. In fact, I'm looking to see, this is Bernard in second place there, and there are only 5 riders left, so it's been a tough time for Chazal.
The best time in is 1 hour, 16 minutes and 6 seconds, and Chazal are going to come in with the fourth best of 4 teams to finish, 1:18.22. Well, look at this. There's a shock now, 42 kilometers. The Benesto squad have gone through with the best time. Don't forget, though, that Mapei, Castorama, Oncé, Gawis, Motorola have still to come through that point, but they weren't the best time previously at 22 kilometers, so they are progressing. This is the Festina squad, and on this squad is Richard Virenque, the winner of the King of the Mountains last year and the former yellow jersey of the Tour de France. He wears 51 in the lineup here. And they have passed through at 22 kilometers so far with the fourth best time, but still with a lot of teams to arrive at that checkpoint. And here's our first chance to see the MG Technogym team. And the man in the different coloured jersey there is the champion of Italy, Gianni Bugno. And this is the team which is setting the marker for everybody to chase. The team who won the race last year. They're now going to go through with the best time at this check as well of 1 hour, 1 minute and 2 seconds, well ahead of Lampre. So when they get to the finish, they are going to restyle the leaderboard. Well, Lampre have been setting the fastest time at the checkpoints. That's changed a little bit now. MG Technogym have gone through at 1 point as the fastest. Benesto's improved on that at 42 kilometers. The Spanish team now heading the leaderboard at the 42-kilometer point. But this is the arrival of Lampre, led by Maurizio Fondries, their real champion. Keeping themselves together just almost as if they're backing off the pace of the head to make sure the fifth man is there on the line. Best time certainly for the moment, 1 hour, 15 minutes and 37 seconds. And here's Benesto now. Look at the face here of Gérard Rouet, the big French workhorse on the Spanish team, because I think Benesto are going to really throw a big spanner in the Tour de France machine today and put Miguel Indurain right up amongst the leaders. And if the face of Gérard Rouet is anything to go by, this team is absolutely flying.
They really look well today. They've got together straight away after the start. They were so organised, and there's the time coming through at the moment. It will be the best time for Benesto, well inside the time of MG Technogym, which is a good squad itself, with Gianni Bugno leading them, Fabio Baldato going for the yellow jersey today. But that was the team out on the road. Benesto doing a superb performance. The man here, number 41 at the back, is Tony Rominger. They would like to be very well nearer that time of Miguel Indurain, but Rominger just dropping to the back here to try and recuperate somewhat.
So that's the situation at 22 kilometers. Gawis is the team which now has the leaderboard at 22 kilometers. 3 teams still to reach there only now, Oncé, Mapei and Castorama. This is the Mapei team still heading up towards that 22-kilometer point. They know now they must get very close to the Gawis time. Benesto went through that point in 25:08, so a 20-second advantage there for Gawis over Benesto, and that is crucial. That means that Berzin is pulling 20 seconds out of Miguel Indurain at that point. Here's Gianni Bugno leading home the MG Technogym team, and this will be the best time so far, I think, when they arrive here. This man who is so unpredictable, but when he is on form, he is so difficult to beat. They're aiming at Lamprey's best time on the board of 75 minutes, and they're going to do it, I think, as they now make their desperate sprint for the line. So the checkpoint lead has been confirmed at the finish. 1 hour, 14 minutes and 44 seconds. Best time for Bunyo's squad so far. And as we look down on Tony Rominger's Mapei team now, news is reaching us of the once as they pass through at the first check for them at 22 kilometres. And they are not going as well as we anticipated. They are 23 seconds behind Berzins gave his team. At the order at 22 at the moment, with only 2 teams to arrive, including Mapei here, is Gawis has set the best time, followed by MG Technogym, who are now home and dry with the best finish time. Benesto third, Once fourth, and Lamprey, who've also finished, they were the 5th best time there. Still 2 teams to arrive, though, at 22 kilometres. And this is the arrival of the Benesto team, and what a ride they've done. Benesto have been the best time of all the teams at the point that they reached the time checks, and now have they done Miguel Indurain a great favour today.
The team have been absolutely fantastic for him today. They've been putting in some superb performances. They've really worked at the team time trial. As they come to the line, I think we will see them coming through with the best time.
As they sprint for the line here, Benesto and Indurain are going to hit the leaderboard right in #1 position. Now then, that is going to hurt the rest. 1 hour, 14 minutes and 9 seconds for Indurain's squad. This Tour de France is wide open. What can the other teams do? We'll take a break.
The team time trial was first introduced to the Tour back in 1927. And this lot assured themselves of a place in cycling history by winning it. Back in a couple of minutes with more racing. Won the first ever team time trial, but what's more interesting is how the idea came about. Race organisers were tired of secret agreements between supposed rivals that were stifling the racing, so they decided to separate the teams and send them off at intervals.
That's how the team time trial arrived in the Tour, and it's been around ever since. Now, open your vocab books to a clean page if you would. It's time for a Tour de French lesson, because cycling occupies a whole subsection of the dictionary in France, and if you're not familiar with the terms, we've compiled a few of the more common ones for you, along with some explanations.
The peloton is the main bunch, although the term is also used in a wider sense to refer to the community of pro riders. Either way, it's a force to be reckoned with. On the road, the peloton can pull itself along up to 30% faster than a lone breakaway rider. And when it decides not to go at all, as in this 1991 protest, there's not much the Tour powers can do about it.
Domestique. Domestique.
Domestique translates literally as domestic, as in service. These are the fetchers and carriers for the team leader, fetching him water, carrying him up to the front, generally acting as a foot soldier, sometimes literally.
Hold on, Michael, you got into me, man. I was just
Bidon. Bidon are the water bottles riders use to keep well hydrated on the road, not to be confused with bidet, which, as any cycling fan knows, serves a different purpose entirely. Contre-la-montre is literally against the clock, better known to us as the time trial.
Maillot jaune.
Attention if you don't know this one. The maillot jaune is the yellow jersey used to identify the race leader, though it's usually just as easy to follow the microphones.
Bon. Bon. Bon.
Not a sexual act in a French financial institution, nonetheless something no rider likes to be caught doing in public. Bonk is actually an English term, meaning to completely run out of steam.
La voiture balai. Voiture balai.
If you bonk badly enough, this is where you could end up. The broom wagon, which travels behind the race, sweeping up the unfortunate riders who are forced to abandon through sickness, injury, or sheer exhaustion.
By the end of the Tour, we expect you to be able to use each of those words in a simple declarative sentence. Talking of which, I hand you back to Phil.
Absolutely amazing. Gay Whistle picked up the speed all the way. 50 seconds ahead of Benesto, so the 36 seconds that Berzin was behind Indurain has now been converted into a 14 seconds gain. And it might well be, you know, that by the end of this race, Gay Whistle will be presenting the team with the yellow jersey if they keep this sort of tempo up. And this is the arrival of the GAN team, and how they have missed those two men, Chris Boorman, the great time trial rider, and the strength of Eddie Seigneur.
They certainly will miss Eddie Seigneur, the man who was the champion of France last Sunday. But look at that, they're going to come in round about 7th place at the moment. They've got to try and beat the time of TV Polish Direct there, 1:17.56, and it may well be that they'll just finish outside that as well.
So there it is. You're absolutely right, Paul. They have done just that. They get the 9th best time so far, and it'll be a lot lower than that when this day ends. 1 hour, 18 minutes. And now there's trouble here further down the race, because this is Castorama, and Francois Simon, the leader of the King of the Mountains competition, has been left by his team. Lance Armstrong leading the team at Motorola now, and they are going quicker and quicker and quicker at every checkpoint. Watch out for this checkpoint here, because they are with the 3rd, 4th best time through at 42 kilometres. They're now coming through, they're chasing the time, and Festina watches. If they beat that, they'll be the 3rd best time at this point here. And they should just about do that. Yes, they have. They've gone through with the 3rd best time now at this checkpoint. But of course, Gavis behind them is travelling at a much quicker rate.
But the team here doing a lot of work out on the road is the Once squad, who've gone through the 42-kilometre checkpoint, 35 seconds adrift. So they're actually pulling themselves back up over the second part of the course towards the time of Gavis Ballon.
They need to be very close to Gavis today. They don't have to win to keep the lead with Jalabert, but they must be very close to that winning time of Gavis, because they've gone so well. And if Gavis were to win the team time trial with the right margin today, then it would be Yvon Gotti in that team, because he's the highest placed member of the Gavis team in the overall classification, who would be given the race leader's yellow jersey. And for Gotti, Paul, it's his first Tour de France.
It would be his first Tour de France, and he has never had a victory as a professional.
No.
He turned professional back in 1991.
This is Festina coming in, the team that carries Richard Virenque as their team leader.
And the big loser, I think, today from the Festina squad is going to be Laurent Brochard, because looking down the line there, I couldn't actually pick him up, so it may well be that he got tailed off 10 or 15 kilometres ago.
I think he did indeed, Paul, which means he loses his 2nd place overall. Almost certainly today, but the team quite clearly didn't reckon on him being a long-term prospect, because they left him behind and didn't wait for him. Now they're coming up with a good time, but it's not going to be a great time. 1:15.31 for 3rd place at the moment. And now the little man, Evgeny Berzin, who could be the real challenge in this year's Tour de France, driving his Gavis team at the front. They break tight, they hold the corner well, because they are setting a trend now that I think will stun Benesto when they get to the finishing line. This little Russian man who beat Indurain fair and square in the Tour of Italy 2 years ago, or last year rather, 2 Tours of Italy ago, and this year he didn't win the Tour of Italy, but indeed he was a challenger throughout. Now he's coming home with an excellent ride here. Gavis leading at 22 kilometres. Gavis leading at 42 kilometres. They're ahead of Benesto by 50 seconds. And that trend, I think, is going to continue to the finish. They're heading up towards the finish. They're about 10 minutes away from the line. This is the Once team now, also continuing to close their deficit on Benesto. They were 3 seconds slower than Miguel Indurain. At 22 kilometres, they went ahead by 15 seconds of Indurain at 42 kilometres. So the teams are not in any way overawed by the strength of Indurain. And here's Motorola. They've shed a couple of riders just in the last kilometre or so as they try to desperately get a time which will put them up amongst the leaders. They've hovered there throughout this race, and there we can now see that they're rivaling Festina's time, which currently occupies 3rd place. Motorola on this finish will currently be in 3rd, although there are teams going quicker than them out on the course at the minute. 5 men sprinted out. The clock will stop at the back of this group for Motorola, and they're just exactly 1 minute slower than the Miguel Indurain's team. As we immediately switch back to the Once team, the team that has been gathering momentum throughout this race, and now we're getting the check. Look at this, they're matching Benesto's best time recorded at the 3rd check, and they're going to go through quicker. So Once go through in 2nd best time behind Gavis. Benesto are now 3rd, so everybody is gaining here.
Well, the fact that they're down to 8 men could well be a handicap for them, but they seem to be extremely well drilled at the moment. As we look at the Castorama team here, who have not been excelling out on the course. They've had all the publicity in this year's Tour de France so far, but there's something like 2 minutes off the leaderboard at the 42-kilometer time check.
Now the arrival of Gavis. They set the road alight with their superb check times. At 22 kilometres they were leading, at 42 kilometres they were leading, and so too at the 52-kilometre check. And now they're going to confirm the best time so far on the leaderboard. They are really going to wake the Banesto boys up, who have done a time of 1 hour, 14 minutes and 9 seconds. Remember that Banesto is Miguel Indurain's team. This is the team of the newcomer, Evgeny Berzin, and every second beating of Banesto will be time gained for Berzin over Indurain.
That's definitely what he wanted. He started the day some 30 seconds behind Miguel Indurain in the overall standings, and whatever he can do to get back that time today will put him back up in the contention, in the leaderboard, and he will feel a lot happier if he can grapple back some time on Miguel Indurain. His team have been superb out on the course today. They've led all the way through, and it may well be that they're going to dislodge the Banesto team off the top spot.
And they're so anxious to get to the line here. There's Berzin going through like an express train, third in line. It's the 5th man they've got to wait for, even if they've got the speed to push it even harder. Number 18 is Bjorn Riis, the champion of Denmark. Berzin's the little man with no crash helmet on. The wind blowing through his hairs. They now sprint for the line. Riis slips it up again. Now they sprint for the line. This is going to be a time. Look at this time. Banesto already on the leaderboard in 1:14.9. This is going to give Gavis perhaps a minute over Miguel Indurain for their individual riders. This is a superb time. It's really opened up the Tour de France today. Well done, Gavis. 1:13.10, almost a minute's gain for Evgeny Berzin over Miguel Indurain. There's the face of Bjorn Riis and the calm, cool face of Evgeny Berzin, who says he will come to this tour and simply do his best. But he is such a young talent, and because they lost one of their strong riders just before the start of this tour with broken ribs, Peter Ugrumov, well, they don't only have one leader to race for now. That's a great time by the team that's now in the finish line. Here we have the arrival at the third check of the day of Mapei GB, but they are losing a little bit of time today to the two teams, Gavis and Banesto. Eric Breukink of Onsay now bringing the team up towards the line. The time, remember, that Paul has calculated they must do 1 hour, 30 minutes, 53 or better to keep the yellow jersey on their squad. And they, I think, are aware of this fact. That is why they've gone so hard over these last 15 kilometres to try and get the time that they require to keep Jalabert in yellow. And there is absolute commitment. This is Alex Zula now, who's putting all of his weight behind those pedals. He was a rider who crashed as well in the Prologue time trial in the rain on Saturday, but got up to live to fight another day. Zula bringing the team home now. Jalabert is the rider in yellow. The clock stops on the 5th man over the line. Total commitment as Diaz de Bala just off to the left of our picture. There he is now. His face a picture of pain as he brings this team through. 1:13.53 is what they need. They're going to do it. Onsay have pulled this out of the bag over these last 15 kilometres. What a ride, and they're giving Jalabert the privilege. Jalabert to cross the line first in yellow. I think he's done enough today to keep it. He crosses the line. 1:13.45. I think that's enough to keep him in yellow. Well, this has been a desperate team time trial today, and one of the best we've seen, I think, in the Tour de France. There's the face of Laurent Jalabert, the rider who must have known out on the course Gavis had put in such a great ride. That team pulled something special out of the bag with something like 10 kilometres to go. They're now home with 1:13.45. And that magnificent performance by the Italian Gavis team gives them victory in the team time trial. The time confirmed at 1 hour, 13 minutes and 10 seconds. The Onsay team, they also hung on to that second place with 1:13.45. Miguel Indurain's Banesto squad finishes third, as in fact they did a year ago, with 1:14.09. And the Mapei team, well, they came home in the end with the fourth best time, 1:14.43. But the Gavis team did their job well today. They have now projected Evgeny Berzin as a real challenger in this year's Tour de France. The overall position has changed. Yes, the yellow jersey does stay with Laurent Jalabert, but lining up behind him now is 3 riders on the Gavis squad: Gotti, Riis and Colombo. In 5th place is Melchior Maury of the Once, and behind him is his teammate Alex Zula. All smiles on the podium tonight for Laurent Jalabert, his yellow jersey saved in the closing kilometres, and once again he owes a vote of thanks to his team. So as expected, the team time trial has turned this race around, and of the anticipated favourites for victory, Evgeny Berzin has performed the best. Look at the time gains over the other pre-race favourites. He's gained 3 minutes 11 seconds over Claudio Chiappucci and Marco Pantani. He's also gained 1 minute 33 seconds over Tony Rominger, 59 seconds over Miguel Indurain, and 35 seconds over Alex Zula. Indurain, the 4-time winner, knows now he has a real race on his hands. Well, the next time these big names should do head-to-head battle will come in the first long individual time trial on Sunday. And we'd like you to take part in our competition on that day. All you've got to do is name the winner and let us know who you think it will be. That shouldn't be too difficult. The prize, a yellow jersey. Here's the number to ring, 0891 444477. Today was a memorable team time trial. Until tomorrow, goodbye. The team time trial yesterday forced the team leaders to show their real strength. Miguel Indurain suffered, but led his Benesto squad to 3rd place. Laurent Jalabert and his Once team fought all day, and they kept him in the leader's yellow jersey by just 8 seconds. One man remained cooler than most. Evgeny Berzin is now a serious contender for victory in Paris after his Gavies team sent a shockwave through the race. They won the day. Jalabert's 8 seconds advantage keeps him ahead of 3 Gavies riders, Gotti, Rees and Colombo. His Once teammates, Maury and Zula, are 5th and 6th. Berzin is up to 8th, Indurain 11th, Rominger 17th. Richard Virenque is now 57th, over 3 minutes back, and Marco Pantani 64th. He's lost 3 minutes and 29 seconds. And that team time trial yesterday was one of the most interesting we've seen in the Tour de France for many years. Everybody expected Tony Rominger to gain time over Miguel Indurain, but instead it was the Tour first-timer Evgeny Berzin who gained time over everybody with his Gavies team. Here's Paul Sherwin now to introduce us to this young talent.
Evgeny Berzin is the name most people are now putting forward as the man to topple Miguel Indurain. Berzin was first seen by the British fans on the roads of the Tour of Britain in 1993 on the 4th stage to Manchester. Already he showed a lot of nerve when he refused to collaborate with Peter de Klerk as the pair headed to the finish line in Albert Square. The Russian, now living in Brunei, Italy, rose to international prominence when he won last year's Tour of Italy ahead of Miguel Indurain. Despite the controversy surrounding his signing of several contracts during the winter, his open criticism of the Gavies team, and his aversion to working with co-leader Piotr Ugrumov, he still finished 2nd in this year's Tour of Italy behind Tony Rominger. Berzin is a man of few words, but with a lot of confidence. When asked about Miguel Indurain, he said, "Everyone in this world is beatable."
And the course to beat them on today goes from Alençon over 162 kilometres. It's quite short, really, and no doubt it will be quick. The wind is quite favourable. The road falls away to sea level as they run into Le Havre itself. 5 small climbs along the route and 3 bonus sprints. Well, this Tour has made a tough start for some. There are 9 riders out of this race already. So in the rollout this morning, just 180 making the way out of Lower Normandy, bound for the coast. And the overall leaders, the yellow jersey being worn by Laurent Jalabert, the green jersey by the sprinter Jamaleddine Abdou-Japarov, and the polka dot jersey by the French climber Francois Simon of Castorama. Well, the stage had hardly begun this morning when there was a big crash, and the man most seriously injured was the popular Belgian rider Hendrik Redant, and after this nasty-looking fall, he was taken away to the hospital at Alençon, and we certainly wish Hendrik Redant well. The first attack of the day, that came from the Frenchman on Chris Boardman's GAN team, Yvon Le Danois. He was celebrating his 26th birthday in style. He went through the first sprint at Mortra, a minute ahead of Abdou Japarov and Martinello and the field.
Well, the riders will be happy with the weather today because it's going to be dry and there will be a high of 20 degrees Celsius this afternoon, but the difficulty could come from the northwesterly wind as they approach Le Havre, which should push them into the right-hand gutters.
Well, at the second sprint today, after 72 kilometres, Le Danois was still well clear of the field, his lead up to 3 minutes 15 seconds, while Abdou Japarov was cleaning up the sprint from the main field to second place. He was finishing ahead of Jan Kersipou. Well, the riders have now moved on to around about 114 kilometres covered. We're on the fourth category climb of the Côte de Bonville, and Yvon Le Danois was caught first of all by two riders, Francisco Cabello, who won the stage into Brighton when the Tour de France visited England last year, and Bruno Thibaut of the Castorama team. They were too quick for the tiring Le Danois. He's back in the main field, being led at the moment by Neil Stevens, and the gap has tumbled down. It's around about 25 seconds, and in fact Mariano Rojas there in the pink on the left having a little word with Eros Poli of the Mercatoni Uno squad, and I don't quite know what they said, but there's a little bit of gesticulation. These are now the two leaders, and Francisco Cabello of the Kelme team is the rider in second position. Thibaut is the best placed of the escapers now. He lies 28 to 2 minutes and 9 seconds up. But the list of retirements is growing, Paul. We've had Citero and Manzoni both give up now. We know Citero crashed the other day. We saw him fall, and I presume he's still suffering from injury. Nothing on Manzoni, but three riders abandoned today, and Marc Sergeant a non-starter. So the field is getting thinner very early on in this year's Tour.
After 2 or 3 days, it really is starting to split up an awful lot. There are three Castorama riders over 1 minute behind the main field at the moment, led by Jackie Durand, who isn't suffering, but he has two teammates who are ill with some kind of flu. That's Emmanuel Magna, who we saw doing an awful lot of work in the first couple of days, and Francois Simon, the man who is leading at the moment the King of the Mountains competition.
They're on the climb here now, and the tempo being set by Eros Poli, so the Once boys have found themselves a little bit of help today, because of course Poli is hoping they can close this race down and give the Lion King, Mario Cipollini, another shot at the first place down in Le Havre. But the finish today is extremely difficult indeed. They climb around the town of Le Havre, and then they have some tortuous descents before they get down to the seafront, where they've actually cut away two halves of two roundabouts to give the riders a straight shot. It is a very hazardous approach.
It is difficult, and I'm not so sure that it's going to suit somebody like Mario Cipollini today, because those two climbs on the way into Le Havre are really going to be used as a platform for some of the other teams who would like to jump clear and steal a victory away from the sprinters who've had a stranglehold on this year's Tour de France. But every time the race slows down, it's always the pink jerseys of the Once squad coming to the front, because they would very much like to keep Laurent Jalabert in the lead, and if they can put the pressure on in the final, then maybe he has a good chance to take the stage as well.
And there we have Abdou Japarov with a puncture. He's just signalled to his team. Now, he's been sprinting so well, but he's going to have a chase on his hands now to get back, because the race is in full cry. On the outskirts of crossing the Pont de Normandie and taking them into Le Havre, Abdou Japarov got a tremendously good wheel change from the Novell team mechanic there, and he's straight back into the action before all of the following cars have passed him by, and that should ensure his quick return to the main field. And the teammates are waiting for him. And in fact, this is Leon van Bon, who won the silver medal in the Olympic Games in Barcelona, and really is one of the great discoveries on the Novell team. He won a stage of the Tour du Pont last year, and now he's been sent back to help Abdou Japarov get back into the race. And the riders, as they've gone over the top of the hill, we didn't see the first place being taken by Cabello from Thibaut. Eros Poli is the man who's led them over in third slot. Now, further along the road is our Gary Imlach.
And Phil, you don't get much further up today's route than this being the spectacular new Pont de Normandie leading into Le Havre, and that being the River Seine, 170 feet down. 8 years in construction, the Pont de Normandie is the biggest bridge of its kind in the world, over 2 kilometres long and held up by 42 kilometres of steel cable. Its central feature literally is the huge hump in the middle, which is made possible by equally massive counterweights at either end. As a result, this is the only bridge on this year's route which is also a climb as well. Even on non-race days, cyclists are welcome, although I don't think the peloton will be expected to stay inside the lines. In fact, any riders with the slightest nervousness for heights will probably be staying as close to the central reservation as possible. Now, the designers say this bridge can withstand winds of up to 300 kilometres an hour, which is just as well because it's a bit parky out here today. But wind or no wind, there is going to be a special sprint to inaugurate the bridge onto the Tour de France route. There's also a set of toll booths at the end, so it could be an expensive stage for the last man over. Back to the race on the road now with Phil and Paul.
Well, thanks, Gary, but don't forget there's also a £4,000 first prize for the man who is first over the top of that bridge. And this is a crash, and it's happened as they've made a right turn at a roundabout, and 1 or 2 riders took the wrong side again of the central reservations in the road. This is one of the Mercatoni Uno riders who's on the floor. And this is a great shame, but you see the split in the road there, and it's happened a lot during the early days of this Tour de France. Riders have gone to the left instead of the right, and as a result, they have crashed. And this rider on the floor here looks to me as though it might well be Antonio Politano of Mercatoni Uno. And it is indeed, and he's looking very stunned, Paul, and I fear that Gerard Port, the race doctor here, if he's hit his head, will probably not allow him to continue. And there is the beautiful bridge, and the 2 leaders are still clear of the race, Francisco Cabello and Thibaut, and there's a prize for 1 rider only, the man who gets to the centre of the bridge first, of £4,000 today, 30,000 French francs. That's a tremendous prize, and they're hanging on by the skin of their racing shorts indeed, because the field is around about 12 seconds behind them, and Thibaut knows it. He won't want to work too hard with Cabello now, because he'll want to win the sprint over that considerable climb to the top of the bridge over the River Seine.
It's going to be a tough climb too, because they climb up to approximately 2 kilometers in altitude, so that's a fairly good climb here. And I'm surprised that, in fact, the Tour de France didn't give it as a King of the Mountains competition. You see the main field starting to speed up a lot at the back there. They can see now in this long straightaway the 2 riders in front, and that gap hovering at around about the 20-second mark. They really will have to pull out all the stops if they want to hold on to the top.
So the long, steady climb, what a magnificent structure this really is, and the French are very proud of it as well, as the Tour de France now crosses on the new quick route into Le Havre. These are the 2 leaders, and Thibaut has taken the lead now. They say that the Prime line will be on the centre of the bridge, and Cabello, well, I'm quite sure they've read the rules and regulations this morning, because that's one of the biggest prizes in the Tour de France for 1 man to win, and Cabello is now in front.
As Cabello leads there, you can see they're just moving 1 or 2 of the cars by, so the main field can't be too close behind them, and it may well be when the big bunch starts to wind up for the sprint, they'll pull these 2 riders back into the fold. And what a shame, after having been at the head of affairs for so long, to have been robbed of that superb prize.
Well, there is the big peloton of the Tour de France, and moving very swiftly too. Once they're over this bridge, there is still 1 small climb to come, plus another time bonus sprint, and then they'll be on the countdown for the finish in Le Havre. A lot of, and look at that now, they're right on them now, and they may not even hang out for the prize of £4,000, because the race is closing on them so quickly, and because they're anxious, the leaders there have got a bit of daylight amongst themselves at the front of the peloton as well. And there is Thibaut. Thibaut is now going for the money, and Cabello, and away Thibaut is, he's got it. He's over the line. There it was, £4,000 for Thibaut. He's delighted with that. What a strange day for Castorama it has been. £4,000 for Thibaut, while there are 3 of the Castorama riders now over 2 minutes behind, all reportedly ill.
Well, he'll be happy with that, because the main field really were closing down rapidly there. We've got the whole field back together at the moment, and maybe the news will go back to those Castorama boys who are over 3 minutes back at the moment, who are suffering to try and get in within the elimination times today. That their teammate Bruno Thibaut has taken that superb prize at the front. It may well encourage them to keep a little bit more rhythm up there and get up there to the finish in Le Havre, but it's going to be a very hard day for Jackie Durand at the back.
Well, over the summit of the climb, now we're on the way down. Once off the bridge, they are 20 kilometers away from the finishing line itself. The field are recovering, but I think now Thibaut and Cabello may as well gracefully surrender to the chase, because they won't hold them off much longer. There they are, keeping the tempo nice, but very shortly now this field will be all together and the sprinters will be starting to wet their lips. We'll take a break.
In the 20s, there were no Coke girls to pop the top and hand you the can. Stage winners had to sort out their own refreshment, something this great Italian rider made a habit of doing on stages to Le Havre. We'll tell you who he is after the break. The man giving himself a well-earned dousing in 1925 was Ottavio Bottecchia. He just won the traditional first stage from Paris to Le Havre for the second year running, and for the second year running he went on to win the whole thing.
And this is the main field. Well, they are now involved in a pursuit of these two riders. Francis Moreau was the first rider to attack just after they came off the Pont de Normandie. Marco Serpellini, at 22, the youngest man in the race, he joined him, and the lead now is around about 10 or 12 seconds over the field. Now, significantly, just before this climb started, the field contested the last hotspot sprint of the day for the small-time bonuses. It was won by Moreau ahead of Serpellini, but significantly so, Jalabert took third place and a valuable 2 seconds time bonus, which means he now leads the Tour by 10 seconds.
Well, that's the end of Francis Moreau's escape. In fact, Lance Armstrong coming to the front here, but it's a little bit too early to try and think about moving clear. He's shadowed straight away by Alex Zula in the pink jersey of the Once squad. He will do the work for Laurent Jalabert.
Well, they're just over the top of the climb. Armstrong will win the climb from Alex Zula, and it's the birthday boy's day out today, because after Le Danois celebrating his birthday, now Alex Zula is celebrating his birthday as well today.
Well, this is Fidanza at the front here. In fact, has got away with Jelen-Iden, but I think when they get to the next little climb, it's going to be an awful shock to their legs. The main field only about 50 or 60 meters behind them, and once they've made an effort like this and the road tilts upwards, it really does sting in the legs.
This is Nidam's 10th tour, in fact, Paul, but look at the counter-attack that's come right past them now and pushed them back.
This is one of the Festina riders going clear here at the moment. It may well be that it's Laurent Brochard, number 53 on the Festina squad. I think he's the man who would really like to have got the yellow jersey in the early stages of this year's Tour de France, and this is more his situation, more his terrain, a short climb towards the finish, but again, the reaction being made at the back, Nidam pulling it back together and Fidanza following him.
Brochard has made the move now. Can he hang on to those who are coming up to him? Because if a little group can get clear, all of a sudden this would take on a new face today.
That was Jesper Skibby who countered and took over the work being done by Jelen-Iden there, and in fact he wasn't too happy with the non-cooperation of the telecom rider, but still, when it slows down, everybody comes back together and there's always a fresh face to try and attack.
5 kilometers to go, that's 3 miles, and the riders now are going to have to work very hard if they're going to break the spirit of the sprinters here. But once, watch out for this very sharp hairpin bend which will horseshoe them back around to their left. It is very difficult.
It's very tough and very dangerous. This looks to me very much like the shape of Johan Museo from the Mapei GB squad, a teammate of Tony Rominger, trying to get clear at the moment. And this man really does have the power to go away on a climb like this. When they go over the brow of this climb, that's when you can use your power and open up a little bit of a gap behind. The pressure is still on.
Now, this is a candidate for a man who could hold them off, Johan Museo. He wore the yellow jersey for a couple of days back in 1994. He wore the yellow jersey in 1993. And there's the hairpin I was telling you about. He's round it safely. Look at the speed that bunch came in. And what a shame the camera didn't stay there, because that is a very difficult bend there. But Museo now has a long, very rapid descent right down to the coast. And he's got 4 kilometers to survive. But once onto the coast road and along the harbour there, he will go straight and then make a few turns up towards the finish. It could favour a single rider now.
4 kilometres to go for Johan Museeuw. He had about 5 seconds advantage when they went round that dangerous corner here. And a lone man on this descent here may well open up a few more seconds, especially a man like Johan Museeuw, who's been in the past the Belgian national champion. He's won so many great races. He would love to take a victory in the Tour de France. It would boost the morale of the Mapei team, because after that time loss by Tony Rominger yesterday, I don't think Rominger was too happy, and this could be good for him. He'll be soon on the coast. He's going to turn left, and he's got about 3 kilometres to go with a very strong crosswind.
Well, Museeuw is a very strong rider indeed, a former champion of Belgium. He's won 2 stages of the Tour de France before, but look at the field lined out now, chasing him down. Museeuw won at Mont Saint-Michel and also in Paris in years gone by, and now the whole field is trying to match him pedal stroke for pedal stroke. He's inside 3 kilometres to go. The sprinters now will be trying to shove their way through at the back there and get up to Johan Museeuw. Not a bad sprinter himself, but today he's trying to hold them all off. A winner of the classic Tour de Flanders this year, Johan Museeuw, but I don't think he's going to win a stage of the Tour de France today. He may have to wait for another day.
Well, it's the Lotto squad of Wilfred Nellison, so Nellison must be in there somewhere taking over the pace. The light blue jerseys of the Mercatoni Uno squad as well. They realise that Mario Cipollini has got a chance to win this stage, and it looks today as if it will go. And there's somebody gone down in the corner.
Oh, my goodness me. That was the roundabout we were warned about, and they've gone straight on into the barriers. The majority of the riders on the right of the road. And that is a terrible crash. The next 2 roundabouts, in fact, have been cut in half, so they wouldn't be that sort of a situation.
And I have a feeling, Phil, there it may well be that the yellow jersey went down there. Laurent Jalabert was the yellow jersey on the right-hand side. He's outside the 1 kilometre sign, so it may well be he's going to lose it today.
This is terrible. Laurent Jalabert has gone down, so too as Wilfred Nellison. How ironic. Both of the riders who crashed at Armentières a year ago are down again. Jalabert is away. There's one rider there injured quite seriously, I think. He's staying on the ground, but Jalabert will lose time and almost certainly the race lead. The rules are quite specific. If you are inside the final kilometre, you do not lose time, but he wasn't. He was 2.5 kilometres from the finish. Jalabert can only afford to lose 10 seconds here, and he is out of the yellow jersey. What a shame. Well, the race goes on at the front, and here it is now as they will approach what will be the 1 kilometre to go banner, and it looks to me as though it's possibly Andre Schmiller who is trying to break clear at the front, being chased by a rider from Motorola. But they will have seen the accident because it happened just off the front of the main peloton there when they went round the last roundabout on the course, because the other 2 roundabouts have been sliced in half to allow a straight passage. There's the 1 kilometre kite. The riders are now in 800 metres to go. And there's the other roundabout, in fact, which has been removed for the purpose of the race arrival today. And the sprinters trying to get desperately up. I think it's Martinelli who's got himself on the front here from the Mercatoni Uno team. I can't see, and I think, in fact, Cipollini has got himself into 2nd place now as we look head onto the camera. Bjorn Ries, who has a real chance of being the race leader now for Gay Wiz, is 3rd or 4th in the line here. And look at this now as the Mercatoni Uno rider swings off. But in fact, it looks as though Cipollini is boxed in. He's trying to get through now. Cipollini coming through with that blue helmet on, but he's going to have to fight to get through now. He's waiting and waiting. Now he's coming. Cipollini is going to take his 2nd win. Mario Cipollini hits the line first and takes it quite convincingly. The rider who will take 2nd place there was just behind him was Eric Zabel of Telecom, and Abdu Japarov stole the 3rd place on the line. That was the order over the line, but the story today, that's about Laurent Jalabert. Here he comes now. He will have lost his lead in the Tour de France today because of that crash which occurred about 2.5 kilometres from the line. Jalabert coming up to the line. The clock on the left of our screen is counting down. He could only afford to lose 10 seconds. He's lost 50. And this is the sprint, and look at the face here on the Lion King, Mario Cipollini, as he comes up the line. In fact, it wasn't Abdu Japarov, but his teammate, Frédéric Moncassin, who finished 3rd. What a tour this is turning out to be. A 2nd stage win for Mario Cipollini ahead of Eric Zabel of the German Telecom team, with Frédéric Moncassin of Novell in 3rd slot. The Lion King is really warming now to the race, and Cipollini is making winning look easy. Overall, gone now is Laurent Jalabert, and the new leader of the Tour de France is Ivan Gotti, a rider who has never won a race and is riding his 1st Tour. 2nd overall is his teammate Bjorn Ries, and 3rd, Jalabert's teammate Melchior Mauri. Looking perhaps a little perplexed, Gotti will wake up tomorrow looking at his first yellow jersey. Tour fortunes have changed again, and the rider worst injured, Fabio Baldato, the winner of stage 1. He finished swathed in bandages, losing 6 minutes. The Tour's first leader too, Jackie Giron, he limped over the line 13 minutes later, nursing his sick teammates home. Well, there'll be some sore riders in the Tour tonight, and let's hope they recover very quickly. Well, the first rider to fall off in this year's race was Chris Boardman, who did so on Saturday in the opening Prologue time trial. Well, I'm very happy to report Chris is making great progress.
Hi Phil, thanks for the kind words the other night. They were much appreciated. Had a tremendous amount of support since I've been back. Things are looking pretty good now. Things are on the mend. It's going to be quite a serious period of time, I'm afraid, but these things happen when you want to win bike races in conditions like that. I'd just like to wish all the lads who are left in the Tour the very best of luck. They're seriously going to need it, and I think it's going to be a hard race. I'll be watching every night on Channel 4.
Well, in which case, Chris, if you've got a little bit of time on your hands, why not join the viewers and try and pick the winner of Sunday's individual time trial? When you've all made your selection, this is the telephone number to ring, 0891 444477. The winner will receive the race leader's yellow jersey. Well, this year's Tour certainly has seen its fair share of crashes, and let's hope tomorrow there are none. Until then, goodbye. The contrasting fortunes of a rider in the Tour de France. On Sunday, Fabio Baldato won his first stage at Lannion. Yesterday, he finished in bandages after crashing in Le Havre. It was a day of accidents as riders personified the cruelty of this event. All along the road from Alençon, riders were left behind. The most spectacular crash came 2.5 kilometres from the finish. Among the fallers, Laurent Jalabert, the race leader. He lost 50 seconds and his yellow jersey. But 2 men did finish well satisfied. Mario Cipollini started in a yellow headscarf. Then he sprinted to victory in his famous yellow helmet. The most surprised member of the peloton, Yvon Gotti, he now leads overall by a single second. Britain's 2 riders, Max Chiandi and Sean Yates, both missed the spills yesterday and finished with the leaders, the 28th and 49th overall. And this morning the riders have moved away from Le Havre along the rugged coastline to Fécamp, where they face the longest day in the saddle. Here's Paul Sherwin now to sketch us a picture of the new Maillot Jaune de Tour.
Every rider dreams of wearing the coveted yellow jersey. Today, the man given that chance is Yvon Gotti from Bergamo in Italy. The 5'10" Italian turned professional in 1991 and has never won a race since. A selfless worker for the team, earning around £40,000 a year, compared with the £400,000 income of team leader Berzin. He's always ridden well in the multi-stage races, finishing 16th in last year's Tour of Italy, but he's never managed to pull off the big win. Today, thanks to the power of his Gay Whiz team, he can be repaid for all the sacrifices he's made for them, with the best prize any cyclist could ever want, a day in yellow.
And Gotti's facing this morning a nervous and long ride to defend just a 1 second overall lead. The journey between Fécamp and Dunkirk is 261 kilometres. It follows the coastline for much of the way, and it finally finishes on the side of the English Channel. Only 177 riders of the 189 are just under a week ago at the start this morning, and they now face a long day as they leave town for the start proper, which was just outside of Fécamp. And the man in yellow, Yvon Gotti, a proud day for the Italian climber indeed. Well, the first sprint came at Benneval-le-Grand after 70 kilometres, and the line was roaring again. Mario Cipollini winning ahead of Laurent Jalabert, so he must be okay after his crash yesterday, and Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov. Before the second sprint of the day, though, a bit of bad news indeed, and frustration for Fabio Baldato. He was the worst injured in that crash in Le Havre, and he's now out of the race. The 12 stitches in his face, I'm afraid, proving just that little bit too painful for him to continue.
Well, after a cloudy start to the day, the riders can expect a clear afternoon with the sun coming through and temperatures going over 20 degrees Celsius for the first time in this Tour. The big advantage for the riders, though, is the 25-kilometre-an-hour tailwind, which comes from the southwest and should push them rapidly towards the finish in Dunkirk.
And so, on to the second sprint. After 148 kilometres, Abdu Japarov, this time getting the better of Cipollini, with Jalabert again in the frame, taking third place. Well, the bunch were together for that second sprint, but very shortly afterwards, the last climb of the day, only a small fourth category climb. That proved to be the springboard for Rolf Jerman of Switzerland to go clear on the Côte de Ubi. After 161 kilometres, he went ahead. Now, Jerman, lying 128 in this race, almost 7 minutes behind, actually picked up a time gain of over 2 minutes. But as we watch these pictures now, the big field is closing in rapidly. The last time check we had was just 25 seconds. I think we're going to see the lone figure of Rolf Jerman being reeled in now, not just by the Gavies team, but also by the Novell team. Both riders, both teams have different reasons for bringing back Jerman.
Well, Rolf Jerman's lead at the moment is a mere 200 metres, having had at one time nearly 2 minutes lead over the main field. And I do feel that the Novell squad from Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov have been doing a lot of work, because Abdu has been very close to winning the stages so far. He lost out yesterday because of that crash, and I think what he would like to do is get the whole field together to Dunkirk to try and get some points back and get the green jersey for the most regular rider back off Mario Cipollini. This here is Rolf Jerman about to end his day at the front.
So it's been a good try by Rolf Jerman, but winner of the Tour of Luxembourg this year. He's not going to win this stage of the Tour de France today, because he has had to surrender to the chase. And you can even, and an attack by Motorola immediately. Looks like Steve Bauer's gone. Bauer has ripped away. Now that's a good tactic. Wait until the race have chased down a man who's away, and when they think that's it, lads, we can have a rest, then launch an attack. And Bauer's done just that.
Superb move. It was taken directly out of the handbook. The counter-attack, as soon as somebody gets caught, then you should just go straight over the top. An excellent move by Bauer, and this looks like Nicola Loda from the MG squad from Italy, who's got onto Bauer's wheel, and that would be good. He's a teammate of Rolf Jerman, who's been in the front for so long. But behind, what they will do now is start to organise themselves and chase these riders down slowly.
Well, how quick has that changed now, as Steve Bauer has put in an attack here, and Loda has taken his wheel. And the field, judging by the long, thin point of the arrow at the head of the peloton there, have taken this attack very seriously indeed and launched a counter-offensive. So Jerman's attack lasted for 60 kilometres. Steve Bauer now trying to move clear of the field. Well, we saw earlier the retirement of Fabio Baldato. We now have to report the retirement of the champion of Belgium, Wilfried Nelissen, also involved in that bad pile-up on the approach to Le Havre yesterday evening. And Nelissen off the back of the field early today. He raced for a long time before he was absolutely certain he could not continue. At one stage he was riding over 6 minutes behind the field, and a few moments ago he took the decision to pull out of the Tour.
Well, there's a chance to see just how close these riders will ride together there. Bauer getting into the slipstream of Loda, because what he wants to do when he's done his turn at the front is recuperate just a little bit. A rider behind the one in front will save something like 20 or 30% of his energy, so it gives him just a little bit of a breather before he goes back to the front again and sets up the pace. Now you can see the light blue jerseys of the Mercatoni team of Mario Cipollini coming to the front. The Polti riders there too. Nobody wants a breakaway today. It seems as if everybody wants to get to Dunkirk as quickly as possible and let the sprinters have another day.
Mercatoni Uno are the riders in the yellow crash helmets, and the gap is 24 seconds, so it is edging forward a little bit, mostly because of the power here of Steve Bauer, a former yellow jersey of the Tour de France and a fourth place finisher overall too in Paris. And the other rider, Nicola Loda, riding his first Tour de France and doesn't seem too happy. And Bauer, in fact, is very unhappy, because he's clearly said one or two, I would think, selected Italian words there, Paul, to ask him to come past.
Well, the time split now 22 seconds for these two riders, and you can see by the long straight line of the main field here that the hammer is really down at the moment. Nobody's shirking the work at the front. The Gawies team doing an awful lot of work, but also Novell there. And every now and again, when the time comes possible, the Mercatoni Uno squad of Mario Cipollini are mixing it with these riders at the front. Well, they have a nice wide road to vent their anger today, the men of the Tour.
rather than the bumpy and tortuous approach to the finish yesterday. And the Gavies boys are having another little rehearsal here for their team time trial racing, because they're all doing their share of the work. Ivan Gotti in yellow by a single second from his teammate Bjarne Riis off to the right there. We're now approaching the third and final bonus sprint of the day at Luberg, and this one coming after 233 kilometers of racing, 28 kilometers from the finish. And the bonus times aren't going to really help either of these two riders, but it will of course help the leader of the Tour de France, Gotti, by that single second, because it means two riders who don't really matter for the overall at this stage of the race are taking away the time bonuses, and that will help him. Bauer goes through first, he gets the small cash prize on the line, and Loda follows him. And here's the big sprint now. Now, will we see Abdou Japarov taking? Yes, we will. Abdou Japarov takes the third place. More valuable points for the green jersey. And I think Cipollini will need to win the stage tonight to keep the green leaders' jersey. So the race is still in pursuit of the two leaders, and they're coming down to the closing kilometres. We'll take a break.
At 261 kilometres, today's stage is the longest in the Tour, but by historical standards it's a prologue. In 1924, not only was the longest stage longer than today's, so was the shortest. In the 20s, several stages cropped up year after year, and the longest of the lot was Le Sable d'Olonne to Bayonne, a ride just 18 kilometres short of the 500 mark. The last time it appeared on the route was 1924, which must have produced a sigh of relief amongst the dehydrated peloton. Not that the rest of that year's tour was exactly a Sunday morning ride. The shortest stage, Nice to Briançon, was 275 kilometres, 14k longer than today. Unfortunately for the riders, the Tour of the 20s never came through for Caen. Otherwise, they could have had a reviving drop of the local speciality. Strictly for medicinal purposes, of course. The local speciality is Benedictine, first produced here in the 7th century by the monks of the same name. It started as a cold cure, a sort of medieval night nurse. These days, though, it's big business, and the Palais de Benedictine is for Caen's big tourist attraction. But apart from a few old relics, there's not much sign of the monks. Good grief, Brother Francois went out for lunch sometime in the late 16th century, hasn't been back. I have to have a word with the abbot about that. In fact, the abbot got out of the Benedictine business years ago, along with the rest of the order. Now the drink is produced by a group who believe a little less in self-denial, the Brotherhood of Bacardi. Production's been modernised too since the brothers brewed their last batch. Still, the old-fashioned image packs the punters in for daily tours, which offer the chance to see, smell and touch the ingredients. Of course, all they really want to do is get to the end and taste. And after just enough to whet the appetite, they're steered expertly into the ecclesiastical off-licence, and shelves full of everything from Benedictine chocolates to bottles of B&B, a lethal ready mix of Benedictine and brandy. If your memory fails you the next morning, there's also Benedictine the video in a variety of formats. It's all got more to do with mammon than God these days. About the only thing that hasn't changed is the recipe. Although, to be on the safe side, I thought I'd check. Yep, it's that old telly classic, the cut to the presenter just as he finishes taking a sip of something. Actually, for medieval night nurse, it's not bad. The riders, though, have long since left this distillery behind. They're on the road to Dunkirk. Let's catch up with them.
Well, thanks, Gary. In fact, the riders have gone so quickly today, they are now only about 24 kilometres from the finish. And the gap, the two escapers, Steve Bauer and Nicola Loda, are still ahead, and they're hovering at around about 30 seconds. So there's still a chance for Bauer.
This season, he really seems to have come back. He's 35 years of age now and would like to ride for a couple more years. And this today would really put the icing on the cake for him if he could get a stage victory in the Tour de France. He won one back in 1988. He's held the yellow jersey in the Tour, but since then he's not been able to get a stage win.
And there's our friend, the Devil, who always stands inside the last 20 kilometres. And a little bit of a reaction the other day from the riders caused a crash, actually. One of the riders hit a reservation looking across at the Devil, and that was Citerio, who was left sitting in the road. But it looks as though they are thinking twice here about continuing.
I think they looked over their shoulders there and they noticed that they weren't opening up any gap at all and figured that at the moment they really are making a useless effort. You see, both riders have been trying for the last 10-15 kilometers to get a gap, and it's all come back together as we look at them now.
And there's a tyre here gone down, and this is a puncture to the Casarama Giron. And Giron is, well, it really has turned out these last couple of days not to be his talk. The first 2 days in yellow. Yesterday he decided to drop off and nurse back to the race two sick teammates and lost nearly 14 minutes in the process, and now he's punctured when the race is completely flat out. And this is a TVM rider. Now the man who's been riding so well on this team is Jelle Nijdam, and it might well be Jelle Nijdam who has tried to go off the front of this group.
I think that was
and this has been a crash again, and look at this, because this is Giron on the floor now. Now what on earth has happened? He was chasing, and all of a sudden, and here's what happened. Giron, trying to get back to the main field, has overcooked the corner here and lost it and gone down, and my goodness me, again lucky that the following car did not hit him. Well, that is a terrible shame for Jackie Giron, but it is amazing how riders are falling off in this year's Tour de France.
And in fact, that was Jelle Nijdam who got away there. It looks like Johan Bruneel, the man from Belgium on the Once squad, and Eugenie Berzine, and that is extremely dangerous. I can imagine there's going to be an awful lot of alarm bells in the main field at the moment, because Berzine is pretending to do the work of his teammate, the policeman, and he may well walk away and get a few more seconds on the rest of the group here.
But the field have quickly calculated who those three riders are up there with Nijdam, and decided it was too dangerous to allow any leeway at all. But that was a nice move by Evgeny Berzine, and that to me is a man who has thoughts on doing something in this Tour de France, and Indurain will have taken note of that.
And that was definitely an alarm bell, because Miguel Indurain has moved right to the front of the main field here. Always attentive Indurain in this year's Tour de France. When we get to the final 20 or 30 kilometers, he is never very far away.
Oh, there's been another pile-up at the back. Now, what is going on? This is another touch of wheels again at the rear of the field.
And one of the men in that crash is Armand de las Cuevas, the #1 favourite from the Casarama squad, the slightly balding rider just in front of this man here, and he was going to have an awful hard time. He's being pushed by his teammate at the moment. He's got to get back in and not lose any time.
And de las Cuevas only just returning from a broken collarbone as well, and he is down once more. This is amazing. That looks like Olaf Ludwig, the big sprinter, who's now powering away. You see his left leg bandage. Max Chiandri, one of the two British riders in the race. And this is now a very, very interesting move indeed, because I think Giovanni Fidanza flashed through the camera there from the Polti team, who is a very good sprinter. But Chiandri should handle him in the sprint, shouldn't he, Paul?
Chiandri's an excellent sprinter, especially from a small group like this. But Olaf Ludwig was one of the fastest men in the world, and we've got now a breakaway of sprinters, so this is quite incredible. Eric van der Aarden has seen the gap, he's seen them looking at each other, and he's decided, I'm not waiting, I'm going to try and go it on my own. And this is an excellent move by van der Aarden. Chiandri didn't want to work there because he was with Ludwig, and van der Aarden may well get the gap.
Well, my goodness me, van der Aarden has flown away. Now they're going to have to reorganize themselves very, very quickly here, as van der Aarden goes towards the finish with 4 kilometers to go. This is his big effort now, and the field are having to chase him down.
It's going to be extremely difficult for Eric van der Aarden to stay away on roads like this, because you can see they're very long and very straight, and the whole field have got their hair in front of them. They will chase him down as much as they can. The sprinters will try and organize themselves, but there seems to be an awful lot of chaos in the main field today. Mercatone Uno, who have controlled the races over the last few kilometers in the last 2 days, seem to have left it to the other teams, and the main field spreading out all over the road. Cipollini will be in there somewhere looking for a lead out.
Well, if you spot Cipollini before we do, he's the rider in the green jersey as leader of this race on points. But to keep it today, he must finish ahead of Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov in the finish, because they are equal on those points scored. There's the figure of Eric van der Aarden. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup you're experiencing. This is due to the live microwave link-ups that we do to the helicopters to bring you these pictures. And Eric van der Aarden, I'm afraid, will be seeing a breakup of different type now. Stars in his eyes, I would think, because the race is all around him at the 3 kilometre to go point.
Well, it's all over there for Eric van der Aarden. If there could have only been 1 or 2 more corners, he could have used the fact that he was a lone leader in front of this whole pack to open up a little bit of a gap. But the speed with which everybody was coming, he could not resist for too long. Gianni Bugno, the Italian champion, trying to go clear now, followed by one of the Once riders. Looks very much as if that might be the shape of Neil Stevens, the Australian rider, who's done an awful lot of work on the stage so far.
Yes, I'll go with that. It looks as though Stevens has got the wheel of Bugno to try and pull him back into the field, because Jalabert is Stevens' sprinter, and he's the rider he would like to see make the most of this. But Indurain again is still mixing it. He is lying in 3rd place. There he is, watching everything, you know. And Indurain has never won a road racing stage of the Tour de France since he started his winning sequence of the Tours in 1991. All of his stages have come in time trials, and I wonder if he wants a road race win.
Well, I wonder if he does, because he's actually had a couple of bunch sprint wins this year in some of the lesser races in Spain, and it may well be that Miguel thinks he's strong enough to take on the sprinters at the moment. 2 kilometres to go. He's riding at the front. He's riding like a man possessed, as if he is looking for that stage victory, but he can't rival the speed of a man like Mario Cipollini. Neil Stevens at the front at the moment in the pink jersey, followed by Yaroslav Ekimov, the Novell rider from Russia.
Little Neil keeping the pace as high as possible, so we must watch out for the arrival soon of Laurent Jalabert, because that's why Neil Stevens is doing all of this. The brilliant Australian champion who won the title for only the 2nd time in his career down in Melbourne, Australia in January this year.
Jesper Skibby from the TVM squad with the red, yellow and blue jersey, moving to the front now, looking over his shoulder to see if he has a sprinter there. They have an excellent sprinter, Jeroen Blijlevens, on their squad, who is a young man. He's won some very good races this year, but he hasn't managed to come to the front in the Tour de France sprint so far. But everybody mixing it there. Cipollini's green jersey's in there. Johan Missouri, who's not very far back either.
Well, Cipollini is on the left side of our picture as we look at the riders. But they're giving him a rough ride in the heart of the pack at the moment as they come for 1 kilometre to go now. And again, the riders are trying to break up this pack, but it's all over now. The sprinters are going to have the day. There's Cipollini. He always waits. He times his finish to perfection. He's about 4th or 5th down the line now. And Cipollini's going to have to read this one to perfection again. It is a pure sprinter's finish. Very, very straight indeed. And Giovanni Lombardi is also going to try and get in on the act now as he comes up towards the front. He's being led out too. Vercatoni Unu have the lead-out man for Cipollini. Cipollini lies in 4th place. He follows his lead-out rider across the road. He isolates the other 2 on the left who sit up now. The sprint has begun here. Johan Museo is leading out for the line. Cipollini still sits there waiting. And Zabel is on his back wheel too. Eric Zabel is going to take him on. Moncassin is coming as well. So this is going to be a great sprint now. Abdu Japarov is now challenging Cipollini. Winner will take the green jersey as they come to the line. I think it's Blijlevens who's coming too. In the TVM colours, and Blijlevens gets it. There's a turn up for the bucket. He doesn't believe it. He's gone past our comedy position. His face is a picture. He doesn't believe he's just won a stage of the Tour de France. What a great victory. And Cipollini, the first word you'll say, Paul, who on earth was that?
Well, that will be a big shock for Mario Cipollini to see Blijlevens coming through. He's hardly raced against that man this year, but he does have an incredible turn of speed. He won a couple of stages in the Ruta del Sol at the start of the year, and I don't think he ever dreamed that he could win a stage in the Tour de France like that.
And here is the sprint finish as Blijlevens of TVM, this newcomer to racing as a professional, really did turn on the finish in style. They scrabbled for his wheel, both Moncassin and Abdu Japarov, while on the right of our picture was Mario Cipollini in green and Zabel off to the right. It was a clear win for the young man from Holland, and that is a feather in his hat. And so a perfectly judged sprint by the young Dutch rider Jeroen Blijlevens from the TVM squad. He gets in just ahead of Jan Zorada, Eric Zabel, Frédéric Moncassin and Mario Cipollini, only 5th this time. For Jeroen Blijlevens, though, the first big win of his career, and he salutes the crowd tonight here in Dunkirk. Overall, in the end, there was no change at all among the leaders, and even Gotti holds on to that 1 second advantage over his teammate Bjarne Rice. And look at this. Normally when the yellow jersey crosses the line, he's mobbed by the photographers and the press, but it seems his popularity here is yet to catch on. One man who has had, though, his second first in a Tour is Dmitry Konishev. He was the first Russian rider to win a stage a few years ago. Now he's the first Russian rider to lead in the King of the Mountains competition. And to complete the set of leaders' jerseys, Mario Cipollini tonight is keeping his green jersey because he finished in front of Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov. And thanks to the Tour organisation, you could win yourself now a complete set of those leaders' jerseys if you correctly predict the winner of Sunday's time trial stage. When you've made your selection, the number to phone is 0891 44 44 77. And the best of luck. That's a great prize. Well, we thought all of the riders had made it safely over that last kilometre, but in fact there was a crash, and Sean Yates was among the fallers.
I mean, mine was a stupid crash. Lance was in a big crash, and we were waiting for him, and I was just looking around, and I touched the guy's wheel in front, and I lost balance and came down, so it was really stupid. It was my fault totally.
Do you think it's because riders are tired, or that riders are actually taking too many risks to try and get a stage victory?
I think it's just so fast, you know. These days it's just faster and faster, and there's no security, you know, for bike riders, and it's just too many obstacles. So there's bound to be a lot of crashes.
Sean Yates is riding his 12th Tour de France, and let's hope he is among the starters when we leave Dunkirk tomorrow, bound for Belgium. Until tomorrow night, goodbye.
The official Tour de France magazine, priced £3.50, is out in the shops now, or you can order direct by phoning 0181 392 1100, and that's a 24-hour number.
With 3 days to the first long time trial of the Tour de France, 4 times winner Miguel Indurain is making his presence felt early. Yesterday he made sure he avoided the falls in the field by driving the pack on towards Dunkirk. Indurain's tactics in the past have always been to hide and await the time trials. This year he seems anxious to impress and avoid the crashes that have hurt this race so far. Overall, the longest day of the event changed little, and Italian Ivan Gotti kept his 1 second margin over teammate Bjarne Riis. Of the pre-race favourites, Alex Zula and Evgeny Berzin are best placed. Indurain is 10th, only 50 seconds back. Well, the talk this morning here in Dunkirk is not about the overall classification, but about the new sprinter, Jerome Blijlevens, in his second year as a professional. Yesterday, he showed a clean pair of wheels to some of the finest riders in the world. Here's Paul Sherwin now to take us through those last few moments to victory of the young Dutchman. Abdu-Japarov is now challenging Cipollini. Winner will take the green jersey as it comes to the line. I think it's Blijlevens who's coming to. In the TVM colours, and Blijlevens gets it.
Blijlevens may not be as fast as Mario Cipollini, but to win a bunch sprint, you need a lot more than pure speed. You need tactics, nerves of steel, and patience. Yesterday's sprint started perfectly for Super Mario. His teammate Martinello led him into the final 200 metres. Martinello moved over, leaving Cipollini to finish off. Abdu-Japarov in the red and white had based his whole sprint on the Italian and began to come round him. However, into the strong headwind, the pair began to slow, having started their effort too soon. Blijlevens in the yellow then began his run on the right. Abdu-Japarov used as much of the road as was legal, nearly taking down Zverada to try and slow down their progress. Notice how Blijlevens closes the door on him and then turns on the turbo and opens up the gap. By this time, the other sprinters knew they were beaten by the Flying Dutchman, who had used not only his speed, but his patience to wait until the others ran out of steam.
And the sprinters could feel at home again today as the race covers 202 kilometres, taking the riders from Dunkirk to Charleroi in Belgium. Leaving Dunkirk this morning, 174 riders following the retirement overnight of the Frenchman Pascal Hervé. He was the rider involved in this crash in the blue jersey when he followed an AKI rider who hit a spectator in a sprint for Prime points. And in fact, Pascal Hervé has broken a bone in his left hand. But better news of Sean Yates, who also fell yesterday. His back is very sore, but he stays in his 12th Tour de France. And a happy birthday due to the German sprinter Eric Zabel, who is 26 today. A third and a second place in the past 2 days. Well, perhaps he could win the stage into Belgium. The sprinters stretched their legs early too. After only 15 kilometres, the first hotspot sprint of the day came at De Panne, and it was Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov staking a claim for an early return to the green jersey. He beat Laurent Jalabert and Mario Cipollini.
And it's not only the racing that's going to be hot, because high of 27 degrees Celsius this afternoon and hardly any wind to cool it down for the riders, with a very feeble 5 km/h wind coming from the north.
And a new leader of the King of the Mountains yesterday, the first time it's ever been led by a Russian rider, Dmitry Konishev. He's only going to be involved in one small climb today to defend that lead of 1 point over Richard Virenque, and that comes with 23 kilometres to go. The race crossed into Belgium after 80 kilometres today. They were all together and in warm sunshine. And now, with about 35 kilometres to go to the finish, 2 riders here hanging on for dear life as the race hunts them down. It's not just the Gavies team who are chasing it. It is, in fact, all of the teams who have likely sprint winners on their squads who are now taking part. The 2 riders out front, Francois Simon, the former leader of the King of the Mountains, who has been ill but seems really good again today, and Herman Frison of Belgium. It's been a good breakaway. Even so, they went clear to around 85 kilometres covered today. Francois Simon and Herman Frison. And we're now coming up to around about 170 kilometres covered. So it's been a long breakaway. And it had potential early on, lead going up to over 5 minutes. But there are so many determined riders today in that main field. And there, the end is nigh as they close in very, very quickly indeed. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a series of attacks as soon as these 2 put out the white flag.
And it won't be too long, as they are now in the streets of Banch. They're going to miss out by something like 1 kilometre from just surviving, as they're back in the main pack at the moment. And I think now we'll see another battle royale, because these sprints, the intermediary sprints, they really have been fighting out over the last couple, with Abdu-Japarov at the front. Mario Cipollini would like to get some points back, because really Abdu is eating away all the time and creating himself a good lead.
Well, the pace is absolutely superb again today, around about 46 kilometres an hour. Very, very quick indeed. Now, watch down there for the arrival of the green jersey of Cipollini, if indeed he tries it. It looks like he's in the centre of our picture here at the moment. You can see him down there. He's thinking of the sprint. And the little figure of Abdu-Japarov is off to the right as well. And Laurent Jalabert is the Once rider in a pink jersey. And that's why the Once team have got the front to keep the pace up, because slowly but surely Laurent Jalabert is fighting his way back up the overall classification in this race by the small time bonuses. It's not really his intention. He wants to play a part in the green jersey as well, but it looks like it might be Jan Zarad who's gone clear here, because this is an attack by the Lampre rider. And indeed, the rider going for the sprint has jumped away from the pack here. And I don't know whether they were ready for an attack like that, Paul, because he's caught the whole field napping.
I think that really did catch them by surprise. He's got a superb lead at the moment. He's still got over 1 kilometre to go before we actually get to that, and it's going to be just over the top of a small climb here in Banch, but he's working extremely well at the moment.
Well, we're not sure if it is Jan Zarada. It's certainly not the type of attack that comes from a sprinter, but he went early, and maybe he knew something about the area that we didn't know. There's the cobblestones. It wouldn't be Belgium without those cobblestones, because as every young budding cyclist who comes to this country to learn how to race knows, that's about the first thing you remember are the tough cobblestones. The rider who has gone clear is Alexander Gonchenkov, the Ukrainian member of the Lampre team, and one of those riders involved in that massive pile-up at Armentières 1 year ago. He's back to winning ways as well, and has jumped clear just before the time bonus sprint here in Banch.
Well, that was a superb move, and you can see how bad the roads are in this area of the Wallonie. It's very difficult, and a lot of riders have been trying to use the side of the road here, as Gonchenkov is at the moment, where very often there's a piece of cement or a piece of concrete which is a lot smoother than the cobblestones. 100 meters, and he's made a superb move, and he's going to walk away with the sprint at the moment, but behind there's still going to be the sprint for second and third place.
Well, he hit them at exactly the right time, and he's gone clear and wins the money, but it's the sprint for second place that matters, and it looks to me as though, in fact, we have Jalabert coming up at the back, and maybe Abdou Japarov is with him there, and we couldn't see them over the line, but it was a battle with Jalabert looking across there to the rider from Novell, and in fact, it's neither Moncassin or Abdou Japarov, from what we've seen there, who took on Laurent Jalabert. We'll have to wait for confirmation as to who that rider was. But anyway, Jalabert was involved in the sprint, and it quite likely was Leon Van Bon who came up for the Novell. So Gonchenkov is the rider on the attack. Jalabert continues to nibble away at the small time bonuses, and the race is looking set now for another great sprint finish. We'll take a break.
Away days have become common on the Tour, but in 1947, when the race headed into Belgium, it was the first time it had left French tarmac. But one man was waved through customs well ahead of everyone else. I'll tell you who after this.
Vauxhall's new 50/50 offer means you can have a whole new Vauxhall now and only pay half. The other half you pay 2 years later with no monthly repayments in between. And because there's no interest, the money you save could go towards a nice little nest egg when the birds have flown the coop. The new 50/50 offer, developed by Vauxhall.
For the really important things in life, you can rely on Standard Life.
On July 7th, charge! Answer the call to battle. Discover the honor. Experience the adventure that legends are made of. Sean Connery, Richard Gere, Julia Ormond. First Night.
When the Tour resumed after World War II, the organisers celebrated by taking the race out of France. René Vietto celebrated with one of the great lone breakaways to be the first Tour rider ever to cross the finish line in Brussels.
It was shortly after that the rabies laws were first introduced. Now, although France is regarded quite rightly as the home of haute cuisine, if you're not careful, life in Tour hotels can become a nightmare lurch from one boil-in-the-bag beef bourguignon to the next. And to counteract the effect this can have on team morale, Motorola have employed a man who's quickly becoming one of the great peripheral characters of the Tour, Willy the chef.
Dinner time at the Hotel Climat, and there's a special Tour de France menu on offer. As far as Willy Bowman's concerned, though, not special enough.
A buffet like that, it's nice to look at it. It's nice for the people like the tourists. But for the racer, it's impossible to eat this stuff.
And Willy should know about dodgy food. 11 months of the year, he's an airline steward in Switzerland, which is how he met Jim Okowitz, team manager of Motorola.
And then he asked me, after visiting me in Zurich, where we own a couple of restaurants, to work for a team, as a team cook for Motorola.
Willy's job basically entails infiltrating enemy kitchens by any means necessary and cooking the food himself to make sure his boys, as he calls them, come to no harm.
I make a few presents, I give him a few t-shirts of the team and a few hats, and then usually I get the permission. So I take half of the oven, he gives me 2 pans, and all the other items I bring myself.
But he's not kidding. Motorola's 2 team buses are packed with Willy's specially imported supplies.
Okay, now I'm going to show you the kitchen where we store all our stuff. In here I have mostly my cheese, then all the drinks, vitamin drinks, the garlic. We have about 3-4 boys who eat garlics every day. I bring my own olive oil. 45 kilo of Barilla spaghetti, also some special rice, and that's about it.
Tonight's carbohydrate-packed main course is risotto with cheese.
And I'm going to serve it in 1 minute.
And while the Festina team at the next table take their chances with the hotel menu, The Lance Armstrong party of 9 get the Willie Special.
It's hot like hell.
And God help any of the wait staff who are late with the cheese.
Vous avez mis où le fromage? Ah bon?
Aptly for a top chef, several people have tried poaching Willie, including Benesto, but he remains faithful to his boys and their personal tastes.
Like the English, they like scrambled egg, or they like fried eggs. The American, they want not fried eggs, they want it easy over. If they win a stage, then they get a special treatment. Then they get a dessert, like a crepe Suzette or something, a good pancake with something on it. Because usually in France, they always get only tarte aux pommes every day, or creme caramel, and they hate that.
The problem with being a super chef, of course, is you never have time to cook for yourself.
No, I didn't have time today, you know, so instead of stopping somewhere on the road, I made myself a sandwich this morning, and I ate them halfway in the car and the other half here in the kitchen.
You better finish it before it goes off.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Gary. And so far from Motorola, there's been no special dessert either from Willie, because they haven't won a stage yet, but maybe today will be the day. We're rejoining the race action now. We've just gone over the very small climb on the Côte d'Andalouse here. It wasn't really a climb at all, and there's a breakaway has been on with Claudio Chiappucci trying to go clear with Angel Edo. But now the whole race back together again. In fact, third over the climb was Dmitry Konishev, so he increases his overall lead to just about 2 points over Richard Virenque. But now the riders try to re-establish a pattern here and break this race up before we go down to the finish.
Well, this is Maurizio Fondries, number 71, the leader of the Lamprey squad. He didn't really want to come to the Tour de France, but he knows if there's a good chance of getting a stage victory, he would like to take it away with him. And he waited for Chiappucci to be caught and attacked straight over the top.
And there's Maurizio. And joining him, Jean-Francois Bernard, now riding for the Giselle team. It's a small French setup, but alongside, he was alongside Miguel Indurain until this year, but now he's moved down to the smaller team, but he's got more freedom, I think. Just coming up there very, very quickly indeed was Brasi. And so Polti have put a man up in the lead as well.
There we have, it looks to me like Eric Decker on the front in the red helmet of the Novell squad, picking the pace up all the time because they don't want this move to go clear. They realise that there's a very strong group at the front who may well be able to hold everybody off.
And they're nibbling away. 14 seconds they've pushed it up to now, and they're leaving the Novell riders to do the chasing here. This is Eric Decker, the rider who took the place in the last sprint. He's now trying to bring back this escape for the team sprinters, Abdou Japarov and Moncassin.
These three riders are all very strong men and working very well together at the moment. As soon as Jean-Francois Bernard had done his turn at the front, you see Maurizio Fondries didn't wait. There was no hesitation at all. He came to the front. They're probably using the biggest gear they've got at the moment, which for the people who know a little bit about cycling, they'd be using a gear of 53 at the front and 12 sprocket at the back, which is quite a huge gear to use. And they're traveling at the moment something like 60 kilometers an hour.
And there is the cavalry coming up behind again, and in the man, as Paula said, in second place, the champion of Italy for a second time, Gianni Bugno.
Just on the right-hand side of the group there, you can see the light blue jerseys of the Mercatoni team. They're waiting at the moment to time themselves to bring up the pace, to bring Mario Cipollini to the front, but this is an absolutely superb move by these three riders. They have 6 miles to go, 10 kilometers. They may well cause a surprise of the day.
Let's have a look at the gap. Here we go.
It's very close now, Phil. It's around about 13 seconds is the information coming over Radio Tour, and you can see it is the light blue jerseys of the Mercatoni squad at the front. That was Eros Pole, the largest, tallest man in this year's Tour de France, nearly 2 meters in height, powering away at the front. And a little bit further down in the middle of that group there is the green jersey of Mario Cipollini. There are the three leaders now, and just behind them they can almost feel the breath of the main field on their necks, and it looks as if it's very much over for Maurizio Fondries, Jean-Francois Bernard and Rossano from the Polti squad.
Well, that's a shame in many, many ways, because again, those that have taken the risk have lost the day. The sprinters and the strength of a good team around you has ended the attack, and it will have done in a few seconds' time. And the old chicken skin, I think, will start to form now on the arms of the sprinters like Abdu Japarov and Mario Cipollini, Jan Zurada, Eric Zabel, whose birthday it is today, because they will expect to win the stage. But again, the counterattacks are coming immediately. The race is reforming at the front. And this looks like we've got a Polti rider having a go here.
In fact, that was Brassi himself who decided to continue. He waited just for the junction to be made, and he went over the top, but I think it was a last-ditch effort, and the main field still chasing behind. In fact, one of his teammates is on the front, and he may well continue to let him go.
Well, he'll try to back them off, but I think it's a near impossibility right now. Brassi looked so good in that breakaway, didn't he? And now he's tried the move to go again on capture.
In fact, Jean-François Bernard has decided that after being in the front for so long, he would try and get back up into contention with Brassi. The two riders have got about 3 or 4 seconds lead over the main field, and they're prolonging their agony, but Bernard looks extremely good at the moment.
Well, in fact, as we speak and we watch these pictures, yesterday's winner, Jérôme Blaelevens, has just punctured at the back of the field, so he won't be in the sprint today. That is very, very rough justice indeed. A back wheel for him while the race continues under the 5 kilometres to go banner.
Well, that's it for Jean-François Bernard. Now the Mercatone Uno boys have got to do the job. They've got to make sure that nobody else attacks over the last 5 kilometres. That's about 7 minutes of racing. They've not got to crack. They've got to keep the speed high, because every time they go into a corner now, somebody will be looking for the opportunity for a slight slowing in the main field to try and launch an attack.
And the Mercatone Uno riders have got themselves up to the front now, all gathering around their sprinters, Martinello and Cipollini. Martinello is a good sprinter himself, but he will be the last man to lead out Cipollini for the line if it works. But as we look now, Castorama have launched another attack off the front here, because they're determined to give a rough ride to the thoroughbreds of world cycling on the flat stages and not give them an easy passage to the line.
It may well be that Cipollini started his riders too soon there. He had them 5 men at the front at one stage. He lost 2 when we went up the climb into town there, and you see they're not able now to control the attacks. There's a Gann rider starting to go down the right-hand side here, followed by a rider from Lotto.
And the scrabble by the light blue jerseys of Cipollini's Mercatone Uno. Steve Bauer has come up now. He's there in 5th place too, as they now try to just take chances and maybe escape before the finish. A moment in attention. This is a very difficult corner at this sort of speed. The riders will be a little bit unsighted at the back. There'll be hesitation there, but thankfully they're around it safely. But it's going to be very hard for riders halfway down that field to recover from braking for a bend like that.
And you see this is a treacherous run into Charleroi here, and that's what exactly has happened to Mario Cipollini. He's started his riders too soon. They started the chase. They pull that breakaway back into the fold, but now nobody can control the main field, and attacks are going thick and strong. And as always, there are a few Banesto riders coming to the front, and Miguel Indurain not far away.
But the boy, and here comes Neil Stevens, never lets us down. Neil Stevens, the workhorse of the Once team, the Australian champion, has got to the front now. He's looking to see if Laurent Jalabert is near his back wheel. He is. He's in 3rd place, and Indurain, I think, is also coming up now at the 3 kilometres to go banner here.
But also moving up there is my man Johan Museeuw. He's lying in 3rd position at the moment, just on the far side of Laurent Jalabert.
Well, if Jalabert were to win today, he will be just 4 seconds off taking the race lead back. He lost in that crash down in Le Havre. But look at this now. Miguel Indurain has come to the front. He's the rider going through now. He's taking part in the sprints as well as the time trials. That's Indurain now setting the pace too. As we look down the group now, we've got the blue jersey of Motorola also up here now. And the MG team are also mixing it. This is going to be a tremendous sprint. The green jersey of Cipollini hovering and holding 6th or 7th position. He'll want to keep that as long as possible. And watch out too for Laurent Jalabert with 2 kilometres to go.
Eric Zabel in the pink jersey as well is starting to move forward, the man whose birthday it is today, and he's got Olaf Ludwig to help him out, and it could well be that Zabel could get what he wants, a victory on his birthday. Everybody is fighting for position at the moment, and there are 2 or 3 dangerous corners to go. You see the rider from Brescialat on the right-hand side looking over his shoulders to see where his teammate was. Everybody wants to help their teammate. This looks to me very much like it's Willem Peters at the front here trying to help his teammate Johan Museeuw, who's lost the wheel. Museeuw has slipped back a little bit.
Well, now Zabel is hoping he can get through to get his 26th birthday present on the line. The Telecom riders are doing what they can. But it looks to me like the crouch style of Vyacheslav Yekimov, who's gone clear now, and he's gone with a lot of vengeance in those legs as he rips away. He was a former world champion and world record holder, and now Yekimov is trying to go and take them from the front. Well, he's a brave man, even with the speed that that man possesses. 1 kilometre to go.
And it looks to me very much like it's Martinello in the light blue jersey. He looks over his shoulder to see if Mario Cipollini is still there. Abdu Japarov is not very far away, but there in third position, fourth position in the green jersey is Mario Cipollini. He's followed by the light green jersey, the yellow jersey of Polti, of Giovanni Lombardi. They'll take a left now, and it's not very far to go. 2 more corners. Now's the time when riders are starting to take risks.
Well, Telecom has swung away now, and Zabel isn't in the frame at the moment, but Johan Museo is in 4th place now and will be itching for victory. It looks like Lombardi has come through on the left of our picture. And so the line-up for the finish now, and I don't know whether this time Cipollini's got it, but Zabel has come from nowhere. He is there, so too is Laurent Jalabert. This is going to be a terrific sprint finish here now as they come up towards the line. As the lead-out man is Olaf Ludwig here. They said he was coming good, but Ludwig could land the big one now. As Olaf Ludwig, Jan Zarada is coming on the far right of our picture, and Zabel is on his wheel. Zarada is taking the middle. Abdu Japarov is digging deep in the middle of our line picture, but on the line, Zabel gets it. Happy birthday, Eric. He takes it on the line. What a tremendous finish indeed. That was a win for Eric Zabel right on the line on his 26th birthday. And again, that was one of the finest sprint finishes you will ever see from this great talent of sprinters in a Tour de France stage. And just look at this for a finish now. Eric Zabel is the rider on the right. Jan Zarada is the rider in the middle, who appeared to have it as Olaf Ludwig on the left dropped away. And then the sprinting figure of Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov popped up in the centre again. He just throws his bike around. They all give him plenty of room these days. And then he just tries to do what he can. But this was a finish by Zabel, and he gets it on the line. And it looks as though Jalabert and Abdu will go to the photo for second and third. Zabel takes it, and up on the line, Jalabert will get second and Abdu Japarov third. And Jan Zarada crosses in 4th. And Eric Zabel now gets his win after finishing second and third these past 2 days. Second today, though, was Laurent Jalabert. Third, Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov. And 4th was Jan Zarada. Paul Sherwin briefly spoke to Zabel.
Eric, what a fantastic birthday present for you today.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great.
Olaf Ludwig did a superb job for you just in the finish there. Was that an ideal situation for you?
Yeah, it's so great and so ideal for me. It's great.
And overall, there has been a change, and Bjorn Ries of Denmark is the new leader of the Tour de France tonight, and here's why. In the sprint to the line, 2 gaps of 1 second appeared in the big field. Bjorn Ries in red was at the back of the second group, which was given an advantage over Gotti's group, and he finished in the main body of the pack. If a gap of 1 second appears in the groups, a new time is applied. It's a hard interpretation of the rules, but the race referees have stood by their decision. As a result, Gotti has lost his lead, and Ries has gained the yellow jersey.
Bjorn, you've been so close to the yellow jersey the last couple of days, I bet you can't believe it.
Yeah, I can't believe it, that's right. I've been too close, you know, and today I have it. I'm very satisfied with that. Well, Gotti, he lost it. I'm sorry for him, but it's the way the race is.
So to confirm the overall situation, Barney Ries now leads Ivan Gotti by 2 seconds, and Laurent Jalabert has come up into 3rd place. Miguel Indurain also gained from those split times. He got 3 seconds on his principal rivals, and that's the benefits derived from riding near the front at the end of the race. Sean Yates, though, well, he didn't get any benefits at all today. He continues to struggle from that crash injury, and he finished over 3 minutes down. In fact, he came in with Dmitry Konishev, the King of the Mountains leader. And the yo-yo of the green jersey continues tonight. It's gone off the shoulders of Cipollini and back onto those of Jamaluddin Abdu Japarov. Now, don't forget, there's still time to enter our competition. Try and name the winner of Sunday's time trial, and your name will go in the hat. And you could be the lucky recipient of a full set of leaders' jerseys from this year's Tour de France. The number to ring with your selection, 0891 44 44 77. Well, it was Eric Zabel's birthday today, but in the end it was Bjarne Ries who got the best present, a yellow jersey. Until tomorrow night, goodbye.